Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Was in Game of Thrones. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. A girl did not understand Nathaniel Lannister. Make no mistake, Nymeria wanted to, more than anything. But she could not, would not, or rather, she absolutely should not. Perhaps that was for the best. Through understanding came realization, through realization knowledge, and knowledge, as she had learned, was often followed pain. Pain brought misery, and misery, death. Yes, mayhaps not knowing might be a good thing after all. Ignorance was bliss, as they say. Better for one to go without and not know one's doom than to face the coming storm and know your end was coming. She tried to tell herself that, seeking solace in silence. It helped sometimes, in her darker moments. Oftentimes it did not. Lord Tywin's son wasn't just a puzzle, he was an enigma wrapped in confusion, girded by swords, shining like the sun. Approaching him was akin to a moth flying too close to a flame. She knew better, yet the light dazzled her all the same, inexorably drawing closer despite the danger. Inevitably, she would lose herself, go blind, and burn. Perhaps she already was burning and simply failed to realize it. And she had no one to blame but herself. She was his sword, his shadow, his dagger in the dark. When someone needed killing, she killed them. When tongues must be silenced, she cut them out. When his enemies conspired against him, she removed them. It had been her way for a decade now. Time and again she had removed obstacles in his path, all without him knowing. For ignorance was bliss, and her master was the sun. He need not know of the shadows that sought to dim his holy radiance. A spy in the north, writing to the king. Dead by her hand. A greedy peasant who wished to steal the dragons and sell them for profit. Slain without a second thought. Vengeful enemies from both Bravos and the House of Black and White. Quietly killed until they stopped coming altogether. She had slain dozens in Nathaniel's name, fought silent wars one by one, plucking the pesky pebbles from his path, clearing away the thorns that would otherwise impede him, leaving her lord none the wiser. Sometimes she hunted down the ones responsible for those thorns, and gave them a rather thorny death themselves, further dissuading others who might wish Lord Nathaniel harm. The Mad King had been responsible for most of his troubles, and she could not kill him. Well, she could, but not without plunging Westeros into chaos, yet she could kill others, and had done so gladly. Her daggers had taken more lives than she had faces. And she had a great many faces now indeed. So many. Her hands were dyed red with blood. They would never be clean. She did not wish them to be. Her very soul was sullied. And that was fine. Nymeria knew well the sight of treachery and how to snuff it out, but what she did not know was how to defend against her own thoughts. They remained her own, yet even now she found herself doubting them, unable to trust in herself. She was his sword, he was the fist that held her, commanded her, directed her ever onward and forward. To even hope for anything more was foolish. And she had been content. Mostly. Watching other women pine over him, seeing love blossom between him and Lyanna Stark, she'd felt the prickle of jealousy and turned her face from it. Then done so again when he inadvertently caught the attention of other women through his kind words and grand heroics. Now the wolf and the viper and another lion pined for him, as did the dragon. All the while, she silently stewed. The hound knew her feelings on the matter, or suspected, and she'd sworn to cut out his tongue should he ever speak of it to anyone. He had not. Good. She rather liked Clegane. He understood her. It would have been a shame to kill him. But he wasn't the one to speak it. The women had, and in saying so, introduced the foul niggling worm of doubt into her mind. It was better when she was his weapon. She craved the cold certainty of steel, knowing she could never be anything more. Her past did not matter. She did not matter. Now she was afraid. Fear was the enemy. Fear leads to anger, child. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. A strange little old man with green skin told her such once, back in Bravos, when she had just begun her career as no one. She hadn't understood his wisdom at the time, but his words had stuck with her long after their meeting in the market until one day she did understand them. Nymeria dearly wished she hadn't. She never thought she would long for the old days, when she was but a tool in the House of Black and White, cold and unthinking. When she did not falter, when she did not question. Because after all these years, she'd learned what suffering led to. Quite simply put, suffering lead to death. Of the body, of the self, of the soul. Such was the choice before her. She could choose to live, or she could choose to die. One was infinitely more painful than the other. One led to escape, The other an end to service. There could be no third path, none that she could see, at any rate. She had to make her choice tonight. Or it would be made for her. A girl, no, not just a girl. My name is Nymeria. Did not wish to fear Nathaniel, nor hate him, and she certainly couldn't bring herself to try and kill him again. She may be brave, but not that brave. Frankly, a girl didn't think anything could end him nowadays. He'd grown far too powerful. Perhaps he'd always been such, and simply pretended for the sake of others. That sounded like something he would do. No, she only wished to serve him and repay his faith with loyalty, to serve faithfully and find silent solace in service. But now even that had been being taken from her. Everything was slipping away. It wasn't fair. Had she been noble-born instead of a wretched Blackfire, she would be a Targaryen. Fire and blood, royalty, a proper princess with riches, power, ladies-in-waiting, all the trappings she lacked in this life. She could have demanded her father, whomever it was, make a proper match with Nathaniel, and probably would have gotten her way, in all honesty. They could have settled down together and raised beautiful children with bright eyes and pale hair. But she was not that princess. She was just a girl. She was no one, nobody. A lion could lay with a wolf or a viper, a true dragon, or even another lion, but not no one, no matter how much a girl might secretly wish otherwise. She could not give him anything. From the moment she'd been born, her only lot in life was death. She was only capable of killing, with perhaps the odd bout of kindness. And then those girls ruined everything by saying the one thing they shouldn't. She had panicked, run, fled, sought to avoid him for a time, hoping the pain would go away. Yet, hiding him served no one, and it only worsened the wound in her heart. She understood that now, she just needed to make him understand. So she had waited until night fell, then slipped inside his quarters. From there, it had been a simple matter to rouse him to action, then lead him outside. Out his room they went, into the hall, past the battlements, down into the depths of Castle Rock Castle, into then through the stone garden, where the dragons dwelt. They did not stir when she led him outside, nor did they emerge when she ushered him out onto the beachhead near the cliffs, where none could see them. Still, that was not enough. For the better part of an hour they walked, until the castle was merely a sizable speck in the distance. The tide was coming in, water lapping at their feet, but she paid it little heed. Nathaniel hadn't questioned her, not once. She didn't deserve his trust. Even the moon had hidden her face tonight, such was her shame. She lurked behind a heavy bank of clouds, leaving barely enough light to see by. Nymeria found a certain irony in that. Oh yes, the night was dark and full of terrors. Tonight, those terrors were her own, large and looming. This is far enough, I think. She had said just now, not a girl. It was important to make the distinction between her wants and needs, however base they might be. Pivoting upon one she turned to face him and bowed, low and deep at the waist until she was staring down at the damp sand. Thank you. She couldn't see Nathaniel's face at this angle, but she could practically hear his brow furrow in confusion. For what? Nymeria dare not raise her gaze for fear of what he might find there. For taking me into your service. He laughed a little. You didn't have to bring me all the way out here for that. Let me finish. Her head snapped up and she snarled at him, the first time she had ever done so. The startled look in his eyes made her feel wretched. You are my world, my king, my emperor, my god, for all that you disdain such. A brief beat of panic seized her, causing her to take a quick breath and barrel onward before her nerve faltered or worse, gave him a chance to speak. You are the one who stayed your hand, who granted me a second chance I did not deserve, and 10 years of happiness. For that, you have my eternal gratitude. His face smoothed out, blanking at her words. This is starting to sound like a goodbye. She supposed it was, in a sense. One way, or another, something ended tonight. Are you leaving? The question hurt. She'd thought herself prepared for it, and still, it felt like she'd been stabbed. Shoving the hurt down into her heart, she smiled sadly. Do you want me to, my lord? He scowled, utterly appalled. Of course not. That was good, wasn't it? Anger meant he liked her, valued her, wanted her by his side. Yet when he took a step forward, she found herself stepping back like some frightened child. Because, at the end of the day, she was afraid. Of what could be, what might be. Nathaniel saw it, too. Damn him, he'd always been able to read her like a book. He held out a hand to her. What do you want from me here, Nymeria? Someone was laughing. Had they been followed? Who dared? Oh. It was her, wasn't it? She was the one laughing. This was bad. She'd overestimated her self-control. Want. She made an ugly noise torn somewhere between a strangled sob and a savage snarl. You know what it is a girl wants, what I want. But you dare not speak it. She wanted his hands on her, inside her, cupping her breasts, caressing her nipples, her hips on his as she slammed herself down onto him again and again. She wanted to ride him into the sand, hollering his name for all to hear as the very stars burned out and the dragons danced around them. She wanted to carry his child, hold the babe to her breast and rejoice in being a mother, as none had ever been to her. But it and they could never be. It was abhorrent to want what she wanted, to crave more of her lord, when he had already given her so much. She may as well ask the sun to rise in the west and set in the east, demand the seas go dry and order every mountain to blow away in the wind like leaves. He had other loves and her place could never be among them. She was nothing, no one, nobody. She shouldn't even exist. Worse, she was damaged, broken, probably insane too, and the worst part was that she knew it. She didn't even think she could bear him children. And what if she could? What would become of any offspring of theirs? What happened when Nathaniel became king? There it was, the terrifying reality that was likely to come, one that not even Tywin Lannister himself dared broach with his son directly. Ah, but a girl was clever. She might not know nobility, or how to curtsy, or drink tea properly, but she could read a room. Likewise could read between the lines, see likely outcomes, and the future that was most likely to arrive. First and foremost, Aerys would die. It was no longer a matter of it, but when. Be it by fate, war, or through his own madness, he wouldn't live to see the next decade. Rhaegar would not be allowed to inherit, he couldn't, if only because it would be more of the same and Lord Tywin would not tolerate the Mad King's son on the throne. So he too, would die. Maybe it would be poison. Maybe he would fall in battle. Maybe she would be sent to kill him. Regardless, his death was certain. The younger son, what was his name? Viserys. Children died all the time in the Red Keep, didn't they? It would be easy. The queen would likely be allowed to live. She was quite fond of Nathaniel, and he, her. All future Targaryens would pass through her after all. Or rather, her legs. It would be so effortless to bind the Lannisters to her, and her to them. From there, Nymeria's notion of the future grew muddied. She didn't know what would happen once the male Targaryens were wiped away, not for certain. But she had an inkling. No, she would not speak it. She would not give voice to what may or may not be. Misery, misery, misery. That was what she would choose tonight, if only because misery was safe. She understood sadness and sorrow, and while they would not make her happy, they were better than an uncertain future. Love might not be a weakness, but hope most assuredly was. Hope was the deadliest dagger of all. And her lord was still silent. So be it. I ask that you treat me only as a girl. She forced herself to meet his gaze, bringing her voice back to a low monotone. A weapon, a tool, a girl cannot be anything more. It hurt to say that, hurt to lie, but anything was better than the pain she feared. A girl is no one. A girl is nothing, and if you cannot agree to that. Nathaniel held his tongue. All the while, he said not a word, he just stared at her. She felt so wretchedly small beneath his glowing gaze, as though she barely came up to his waist. Why wouldn't he speak? Was she so unworthy of his words? Were her words truly so disappointing to him? Aggravated, she drew the dagger at her hip and knelt. From there, she offered it up to him with both hands, head bowed, uncaring as the waves lapped at her legs. If you cannot accept this, then a girl asks that you kill her here and now. Neither of them made a sound. The world was silent, save for the waves lapping incessantly upon the shore. Nymeria didn't dare move, didn't dare raise her head, scarcely dared to breathe, such was her fear. Did his silence imply understanding? Could they go back, make things as they were before? No feelings, no emotions, no complicated matters, when she simply did as she was told and never dared to hope for more. Or was she to die here? Two paths stretched before and she found herself not liking either. But what choice did she have? Nathaniel could never love her. He would be a fool to do so. And he was no fool. She heard him stride forward suddenly, boots tromping near silently in the wet sand. Felt him pluck the long dagger from her grasp, saw the low light catch the silvery steel and make it shine in the low light. He considered her for a long moment, gauging her, testing her, ready to call her bluff if indeed there was one. When it became clear there wasn't one didn't move, he did, he knelt and set the steel to her throat. Beheading, then, he was strong enough to deliver such a death, it would be a clean one at least. Nymeria closed her eyes, exhaled a soft goodbye, and waited for oblivion. Let it be quick. Why wasn't it quick? Any moment now she expected to feel the cold sting of steel, followed by sweet oblivion. She longed for it, craved it, release. No more pain, no more fear, no more uncertainty. She needed it. Didn't she? Then why did she feel so relieved that it hadn't come yet? The flat of the knife tapped the side of her neck. Once, twice, thrice now, tracing her jugular. At length, Nathaniel finally spoke. I hate people that lie to themselves. You, of all people, should know that. Despite her best efforts to rein herself in, a tiny tremble betrayed her body. I'm not lying. I wish to die. Please, release me. Are you sure about that? He spun the knife around, braved its hilt with both hands, and pressed the blade to his own throat, causing her eyes to bulge. How about now? She gasped. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? He stared back at her with a small smile. I don't want to live in a world without you, and since you're clearly keen on dying, you won't mind if I go ahead of you first. Panic. Raw animal instinct seized Nymeria's body from head to toe, and she acted without thinking, all but lunging forward with a pained cry to bat the blade from Nathaniel's hands. He couldn't die. He absolutely must not die. She practically tackled him to the sand in her haste to save him from himself, determined to wrestle the weapon from his grasp. Imagine her surprise then when he led her to just that. She successfully struck the knife out his hands in a single slap. It flew through the air and plonked down into the water, where it was swallowed by the tides. She didn't even have a chance to retrieve it. Even as she tried to rise, an arm clamped down around her waist, holding her fast. Her eyes bulged, but it was too late. A quick tumble in the surf and she found herself pinned beneath him, trapped. Nymeria went still, keenly aware of not just how close he was, but that she'd been deceived. Well, would you look at that? Golden eyes gleamed down at her. You have something to live for after all. She growled up at him and tried to muster some semblance of anger. All that emerged was a sob. Why couldn't you just kill me? Everything would be better if you just let me go. Because. He helped her up and thumbed a bit of sand from her cheek. You'd regret it. Could she regret something if she was dead? She didn't know. It frightened her. She'd always been afraid, hadn't she? You need to stop doing that. He flicked her forehead, drawing a wince from her. Perseverating about things that may or may not happen won't help you, you know. She tucked her chin into her chest and refused to look at him. What do you want from me, my lord? That depends entirely on you. He sat down before her. What do you want? Nymeria already knew the answer before he finished speaking. Here at last, she looked at him. I think I want to live. He placed a hand to his ear. Didn't quite catch that. Damn him for making her saying it. I want to live. A smile split his face. You'll have to be louder. She glared at him furiously. I want to live. He leaned back. I can't hear you, Tilda. She hollered. I want to live. Good, good. Nathaniel beamed like the boy he no longer was, unable to hide the little flutter of pride he must have felt just then as shouted at him. Rather than rebuke her, he took a hold of her hands and stood, pulling her up to her feet alongside him. Don't you feel so much better, now? She did, remarkably. It didn't solve everything, but she felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. And yet one thing was left unresolved. Nymeria eyed Nathaniel like the half-dragon she truly was at heart, ready to bite and not at all liking the trick he'd played upon her, yet for all that, he made no untoward moves against her. Part of her wished he would, if only so she could finally have an answer. He was so incredibly close. Her hands had yet to leave his and they were so very warm. Her face flushed. This would be foolish. She couldn't bear him any children. She had nothing to offer him, no dowry, no riches, no rewards, only herself. She knew nothing of the softer things in life. If, by chance, they did have children in the distant future, she could only teach them what she knew, how to defend themselves, fight, and kill. Was that enough? Could it be? Maybe. His fingers threaded through hers. Tell me what's wrong. She gripped his hands tighter. Nothing was wrong. Everything was wrong. She didn't know what to do. Lyanna made romance look so easy, downright effortless even, yet here she was, frozen, wholly at a disadvantage, out of her depth. For her, stabbing was usually her modus operandi, her go-to method of extricating herself from any unpleasant predicaments in which she found herself. Somehow, she didn't think stabbing Nathaniel would get her out of this. Well, maybe it would, but she didn't want to hurt him. She wanted. Her feet carried her closer to him. Remarkably, he didn't retreat but edged closer as well. She shook her head, at a loss. You can't be with me. I'm no one, nothing. He scoffed, unafraid. You're someone to me. A bitter laugh leapt from her lips. That sounds horrible. Did you make that up yourself? Not at all, he hummed a little, the sound warming her bones. You've been with me the longest, remember? She had, hadn't she? The realization rattled her. As far as she knew, he communicated with the Queen through letters, but never face to face. He'd only met Elia briefly, and she'd departed soon thereafter. He and Cersei hadn't been on good terms when he'd first left Castle Rock. Lyanna had come afterward, but she had sworn herself to his service him almost from the first. When they'd both been little more than children. 10 years of loyal service. 10 years of doubt. 10 years of longing. I really couldn't have done any of this without you, you know. Acknowledgement, recognition, vindication. Nymeria squirmed happily beneath his praise, unable to find the right words to say. She tried, her lips parted, closed, parted again, but no sound emerged. Salvation, how sweet it was. Nathaniel squeezed her hands instead, spurring her on. Talk to me, tell me what you want. As if he didn't already know. What she wanted. What she desired. What she craved more than anything. She scooted closer and looked at him, nose brushing his as her eyes flitted up to his lips. I want to do something foolish. Judging by his expression, he had a good idea of what that foolishness was. Then what's stopping you? He made a fair point. What was stopping her? Herself. Common decency. Nothing at all. Hadn't she given enough? Sacrificed enough? Been enough? It's all right. He laid a hand on her cheek, dimpling in a small smile. To be honest, I'm out of my depth here, too. A pitiful flicker of hope fluttered in her heart like a candle in the same. Then you feel the same. I'm not sure. At least he was honest with her. But I'm willing to see where this goes. She squirmed anew under his gaze. I may not be able to give you children. That's fine. He held up their interlocked hands and kissed them. And if we have any? He paused, realizing she was quite serious. Then we'll raise them properly, he added at her stunned look. We'll make 'em strong, too, just as strong as any other kids I might have. How does that sound? Raise them, just like that. They wouldn't be treated as bastards, nor set aside. Her greatest concern, a hurdle most fearsome for the future, and it wasn't even one at all. Talk about making mountains out of molehills. Had she truly been afraid for nothing? Perhaps sensing her concern, he pressed his tanned forehead to hers. I'll be there for you. Whatever comes our way. What was she to say to that? What could she say? The assassin struggled against herself a moment more. And fell. I don't deserve this. He chuckled. Of course you do. Everyone deserves happiness. With that, the last tenuous thread of Nymeria's self-control snapped. To the hells with it. Words had failed her, so she let her lips do the talking. She stood on the tips of her toes and leaned the rest of the way in to kiss Nathaniel. Softly at first, testing the waters, probing. Then fiercely when it became clear he had no intention of running away. She all but bit his lip in her haste to get at him, no longer caring if she made a fool of herself for it. So be it, she no longer cared what they called her. Tilting her head for a better angle, she drank him in deep and felt her blood warm as her body tingled with excitement. His arms briefly settled on either side of her hips to hold himself fast, but she ruined that by kissing him again and again and again, scarcely pausing to breathe. Her heart was beating so blasted fast, her every thought, cared and regret stripped away in this moment. Was this what she'd been missing out on? All this time, 'twas not fair. Her lord didn't run away. When her lips sought his for a third time, he chased them with his own, preventing her from pulling away, not that she would have. One arm dripped lower, curling possessively around her waist to hold her close, heedless of her damp clothes from the surf. Her hands reached up to tangle in his damp hair, a smile gracing her lips as he reached down with one hand to cup her cheek. The other found her flank and lifted her left leg to stroke her inner thigh through her breeches. That tore her tenuous control to pieces. Too many clothes, too damp, too cold. In conclusion, off. It was there that things truly grew heated between them. Her hands fisted in his tunic and found the buttons there, opening it quickly as he fiddled with the laces holding her own shirt garments in place. She laughed when he failed to untie them properly and instead leaned close to nuzzle his neck, lavishing a series of long, lasting kisses upon his throat until he finally succeeded. From there, clothes flew in every direction, scattered about the sands. It was frenzy. It was madness. It was glorious. Let chaos take the world. She kicked off a shoe. He lost a glove. From there, they made a crude blanket of their clothes and capes and laid atop them. In hindsight, Nymeria wasn't sure who got whose shirt off first, only that at some point she could feel the salt air tickling the skin of her bare breasts, his fingers running down her exposed back as he lifted her into his lap, the better to usher her onto new heights of carnal glory. Two could play that game. She dug her nails into his shoulders and he retaliated in kind. One hand pinched her rear to distract her even as the other delved between her thighs, gently parting her legs. From there, he began kissing her stomach, then lower, lower still. By the time she realized what he intended, it was too late and he had her gasping in pleasant surprise. Oh, that felt very nice. Wait, that was a Bravo C technique. Where had he learned to do that? Vengeance would soon be hers. She had his trousers off almost immediately thereafter and there was no escape. She planted herself atop him and ground down, reveling in the pleasure of it all, the grunt drawn from him before she dove down and kissed him again. No words were said on their part, nor needed. They were, the both of them, certain what they wanted, and none could have stopped them. Nymeria would have taken the hand of any who dared try and their head besides. This felt good. No, better than good. It was bliss. How had she gone without this? She wanted to experience it every day. She wanted him. He wanted her. The outcome was simply inevitable. Sitting up atop his lap, she bared herself to him, but not fully, trying to hide her scars in the dark. There were so many after all, yet he wasn't having it. Nathaniel Naruto kissed each one of them. 3 by her bosom, 1 just shy of her heart, another near her ribs and a 6th at her neck. She had more still on her legs from narrow escapes when she was much younger. Each were of the wounds she'd taken since she first took up her daggers, of injuries gained both in Westeros and Bravos alike. Each were blessed by his lips. He lavished attention upon her full breasts, nuzzled her neck, devoting himself to each and every one of her old wounds until she was gasping and mewling in his lap, begging for mercy. Her lord granted it to her almost reluctantly, turning his attention to her scarred facade, followed by her mouth. He muttered something between those kisses, speaking in a language she didn't understand. His fingers brushed her marred visage. She felt a strange tingle in her face then, just over her old wound. The words were older than High Valyrian, ancient even, and for a moment she could have sworn his palms actually glowed gold. Whatever he'd done, whatever was doing, she had no mirror by which to see. In the end, she didn't dwell on it, she'd see come morning. For now she had concerns of a more carnal variety. Lyanna and Cersei and Elia and that bloody dragon queen may well take pieces from him in the future, but she would be first. His unforgettable first. Whether the realm learned of her or not, she didn't care. In fact, she was quite content to fade into obscurity, so long as she had him. Her hands cupped her lord's face and she kissed him deeply as they coupled, letting his fingers tangle in her pale hair. Nuzzling her forehead with her own, she rubbed her face against his, gasping but a little as his hand settled upon her flank and urged her on, quickening her pace atop him. She tilted her head back, arched her neck, and pushed him back down to the sands. Reveling in his stunned expression, she swayed atop him as she'd once seen the dancers of Bravos do, breasts bouncing as she ground herself against him. Each movement was made in sensual slowness, drawing out every moment for her own enjoyment and his pleasure. To the hells with the rest. She wanted this. She needed this. She'd stood idly by for so long, suffering in silence while everyone else got what they wanted. No more. She was a girl, no longer. She was a woman. She was Nymeria. Nathaniel bucked against her and suddenly it was she who found herself pinned, pressed atop their scattered clothes into the sand. If she'd thought their earlier positions were grand, then this was even better. She locked her legs around his waist and arched her back, urging him on. Sweet, glorious release. 0.0.0.0. In hindsight, Naruto shouldn't known it was too much to hope the ladies wouldn't have a catfight. Thankfully, he wasn't present to witness the chaos that followed the next morning. Alas, it began as most things often do, with a careless remark. So you were to wed Nathaniel, then? Lyanna lowered her blunted blade and lifted her chin, bridling just a little at the sudden inquiry. In an instant she became keenly aware of Cersei's green gaze piercing her from across the room. She wasn't the one to make that inquiry, however, nor had the hapless straw man she'd been wailing on. No, the question came from Elia Martell. She didn't think the Dornishwoman meant anything untoward by what she'd said just now, but it was so hard to tell sometimes. Even the most innocuous remarks often held a hidden edge beneath the satin. Even now she couldn't quite quantify the meaning behind her words. As though she were testing, probing her, gauging her for any sign of weakness. Well, she would give her none. I am, she said instead. Our fathers made a match between us, he is to be my betrothed. What of it? HMHMM. The Princess of Dorne hummed once, reached down, took up a practice weapon, a short sword, of her own, and waded into the ring after her. And you love him, I trust. LL love. Her face flushed to the very roots of her hair, causing Cersei to tut in mild amusement at her plight. Sister, a baron saw it and blew out a sigh as he prepared his own spear to face the Lannister girl in mock combat. Do not torment the poor girl. Elia clicked her tongue at him and adopted a loose stance, smooth and shifting as the sands of her homeland. I am not tormenting her, brother. I simply wish to satisfy my curiosity. By embarrassing her. Cersei saw an opening and used it to land the first strike against him, sweeping low to make the princeling hop backwards. The moment his feet touched the ground, she went on the attack, putting him on the back foot in a whirl of strikes that, while not necessarily graceful, more than made up for it in ferocity. Tyrion applauded happily on the sidelines. Well fought, sister. Lyanna watched them warily, fearing she might one day pursue Nathaniel with the same intensity. In all honesty, did not know how to feel about that. Such love between kin was technically taboo, yet had the Targaryens not wed brother and sister together for centuries. It seemed a slippery slope, made all the more treacherous by Cersei's implicit offer of help in the bedroom. Why, just thinking of it made her burn. Surely the art of lovemaking couldn't be that, but this was Nathaniel's sister. I asked you a question, girl. Right, she'd forgotten about the Martell. Annoyed, she used the reprieve to rally and glare Elia's way. Of course I love Nathaniel. I wouldn't wed him otherwise. Are you sure about that? Swift as a serpent, she flicked the blade her way, forcing her a hasty parry. Love and lust are two very different things. One lasts, the other does not. A scowl writ itself across her face, a thrust leading into an overhand swing that was in turn nimbly dodged. And what do you know of love? More than you can possibly know, Stark. Elia circled round and slapped her vulnerable flank with the flat of her blunted blade in passing, drawing an indignant squawk from Lyanna in return. Perhaps if you paid attention, you would learn. Indignant, she sputtered at her. I've learned a great many things. In Winterfell perhaps, but not of the future, not where it matters. Elia granted her a small, sad smile, suddenly seeming decades older than she truly was. You think that chivalry and honor and nobility will save you from what is to come, but they will not. You know nothing, Lyanna Stark. Love least of all. Her right eye twitched, and not for the reasons one might expect. Silence. The princess backed away, crooking one finger after herself. I'm afraid you'll have to make me thus. Lunging forwards, Lyanna braved her blade with both hands and barged into Elia's guard, ignoring the riposte that rattled her ribs to smack away her weapon. This time, a baron's sister wasn't quite quick enough to get out of the way. Howling her triumph, Lyanna landed a powerful blow against the smug girl's shoulder and sent her staggering. Blazing with triumph, she drove a boot forward into the girl's bosom to kick her to the training room floor. A distant shout informed her that a baron had landed a similar strike on Cersei via sweeping her legs, leaving her sprawled on the flagstones. Better. Elia climbed to her feet, dusted herself off, and knelt to retrieve her sword once more. There may be some fight in you yet. Lyanna growled and waded in, sword swinging. Alas, the Martell girl had learned from her mistake and was no longer easy prey. She might well be stronger than her, but the girl was older and faster. She swayed away from each sweep, gladly giving ground one step at a time, yet careful to never let herself be backed into a corner. The result was something of a circular chase that rather left her feeling like a fool, unable to reach her. Round and round they went, with Elia ever out of reach, a cycle without end. Until it didn't. Quick as can be, Elia stopped evading and danced into her defenses, stomping down at her foot before striking with startling speed. Lyanna didn't recognize the style, yet handily blocked the first lung, slightly less so the second, and when the third swooped in at her legs as a baron had done for Cersei, she immediately made to block her lower torso. only to find herself blocking only empty air. A feint. Elia swept up under her chin before she could recover. Yield. You are beaten. It is useless to resist. Lyanna desperately wanted to. More than anything, she longed to fight on, win, prove herself, but she couldn't. Infuriated, she cast her sword down to the ground, the steel creating a harsh clatter as it met the stone. Across the makeshift arena, she dimly saw a baron helping a sullen Cersei to her feet. There was a small tear in her right sleeve that wept blood, and Tyrion was already toddling over with a fresh roll of linen to wrap it. Seemed she hadn't fared much better than her, at least. But for some reason, Elia still hadn't moved the sword from her throat. I will ask you again, do you love Nathaniel Lannister? Will you be true to him? Are prepared to defend him against the wars and horrors to come? Lyanna thumped a fist to her bosom and inclined her head curtly. I do, I will, and I shall. Elia scrutinized her for a long moment. Only then did she lower her blade. We shall see, Stark. Nathaniel would have had something to say about her tone just now. But Nathaniel wasn't here to defend himself now, was he? He'd wandered off to do gods knew what last night and hadn't returned. Lord Tyne didn't seem too concerned. Her betrothed was likely looking for Nymeria or Sumsic, and hopefully to knock some sense into her. Thick as thieves, those two. She hoped he could talk some sense into her. It would be a shame to lose such a loyal friend. Why all these questions? It had something to do with that heart tree in the stone garden, didn't it? She must have seen something. She just knew it. They had one just like it back in Winterfell, but older, healthier. Yet for all that, it had never once spoken to her, but here Elia was talking of multiple wars that hadn't even begun just yet. And what horrors? Surely she wasn't talking of them. They'd been gone for ages. Aha, she finally understood. Elia cared deeply for Naruto. Perhaps almost as much as she did. That much, she could respect, even if she secretly wanted him all to herself. Alas, that seemed less and less likely by the day. They were going to have a long talk about this, he and her. It was going to be loud. Whether that was an angry loud or a more satisfactory one would be entirely up to him. Now, then, another question. Here at last, Elia's smile turned sly. Do you know how to please a man in bed? She does not, Tilda. Cersei sang from across the room, wearing the biggest smile. It's quite the problem. Elia huffed. Quiet, Lannister. I'll deal with you and your nonsense later. Nathaniel's sister smiled on, undaunted. Lyanna scarcely heard either of them, because her mind fizzled right out. Why was everyone asking her that question? They'd come close, yes, but they'd not yet done that together, though she knew such would be expected, as husband and wife. She was rather looking forward to it, in all honesty. Now if only everyone would stop teasing her about it. There, Elia tutted as an older sister might, taking her by the hand, do not fret. We are taught such things in Dorne. I can teach you. She could. Lyanna squinted at her, not trusting her quiet yet. And what would the price for such assistance be? A modest sum. She didn't think it would be modest at all, and it was not. You can be his wife all you like, Elia said, all smiles. I'd much rather be his mistress. Tyrion balked. Cersei's jaw clicked open. Lyanna choked on her own spit. A baron clapped a hand to his forehead. Dear sister, why are you like this? I am rather fond of our lion, as you well know. Still wearing said smile, the princess of Dorne took a hold of Lyanna's free hand, preventing her from squirming away or worse, lashing out. I was fortunate enough to meet him before you did, but I can hardly claim to have done anything with him. We merely held hands while we walked and talked for a time. Had she been a dragon, Lyanna would have spat sparks. What, held hands? Before she had. That scandalous harlot. It was even worse than she feared. Then, another challenger approached. She wanted to thump her over the head and leave her for dead, but no. Nathaniel would never forgive her if Elia had an accident in Castle Rock. Worse, it would make the Lannisters seem untrustworthy and make an enemy of Dorne. She knew better. She did, really. Must not kill. Oh, dear. Elia giggled with saccharine sweetness. You seem rather cross. Perhaps I touched a nerve. Keep your lessons. Lyanna forced the words out through grit teeth. I'll bed and wed him myself. Elia tilted her head. Are you sure? That sounds rather unwise if you ask me. She didn't want to woo him with another woman's methods. She wanted him to love her for, well, her. Even if his heart could never truly belong to her and her alone fractured as he was, she was damn well determined to hold the largest piece of it. I said no. Cersei sidled up to her with a smile, sensing a challenge. May the best woman win, then. Lyanna scowled her way. Why are you even involved in this? Because I have his best interests at heart. As do you. Her face flushed. You cannot be serious. A shrug was her sole reward. I concur. Elia clapped her hands and inclined her head in delighted agreement. We all want what's best for him, do we not? On that, they were of one mind, they only disagreed on what they thought the best should be. Lyanna bridled, rightfully incensed. Fine, then, she would show them both. And every other challenger besides. This meant war. Naruto blinked. Frowned in disbelief. Squinted hard now, as he beheld the sordid mess before him. What in the hells did I miss? To his credit, he and Nymeria had returned to Castle Rock with all due haste in the hopes of quietly quelling any dissent that might have fomented in their absence. He was used to the chaos, expecting it even, given their unceremonious departure. And some of it, he had been able to predict. Tywin father, for instance, had asked to speak with him later, while Joanna merely looked at him and Nymeria and just smiled. Hiding was fruitless, there. Mothers always knew what you were up to. They were scary like that. To be fair, he'd not seen neither hide nor hair of Tyrion as of the moment, but perhaps that too was for the best. He wanted his little brother to remain innocent of such things a little while longer. Alas, in all his years, he'd not been prepared for this. Anticipated it, yes. Prepared for it, nope. How did one prepare for this sort of thing anyway? Answer. You do not, for you cannot. Truth be told, E'd expected something else altogether. Instead they found this strange sight, awaiting him in his bedroom, rather, the three of them sitting upon his bed in varying states of disarray. Lyanna's beautiful blue dress was ripped near the shoulder to expose a hastily bandaged cut there. Cersei bore a bruise of lively purple and black on her cheek, while Elia was nursing a split lip with a bloody handkerchief. Of a Baron and Tyrion, there was no sign. Wise of them, they must have got while the getting was good. He couldn't blame them, because the girls didn't even seem to notice him, they were too busy glaring at each other. They were not nice glares. Too sharp, too angry, promising pain to one another at the least, outright murder at the worst. Judging by their injuries, they must have had a fight of some sort while he was away. Ordinarily, that wouldn't have troubled him whatsoever. People fought all the time, noble ladies more than most. Best to let them air their grievances and be done with it, right? Wrong. He might just be marrying Lyanna once this mess was over. His feelings for Elia were still something of a mystery, and Cersei, no, not going there right now. No matter how good she looked in that crimson dress of hers. Heresy, foul treachery, from his own mind no less. For a wild moment he thought about just backing the hells up, easing the door shut and simply not dealing with this today. He was sore, sleepy, really needed to have word with Rhaella in his dreams, come to think of it, and he had an attack to plan. Too late, they saw him. There you are, Cersei spoke first, idly noticing a silent Nymeria at his side. Brought her back into the fold, have you? Quote. I have. He hedged warily, not liking the look in her eyes for a moment. What did I miss? Oh, nothing. Elia tossed her head, flicking a strand of dark hair out her eyes. We simply had a little talk, Lyanna said. Just the three of us. Cersei seconded her. A very enthusiastic talk. Seems like more than a talk to me. Elia blinked. Does it? They were trying very hard to play innocent about something, but what, exactly? They'd clearly gotten into a fight, but what would they possibly be fighting over? Oh. It would have to be him, wouldn't it? He couldn't think of anything else that would rouse the three of them to violence so swiftly. Unless they'd simply decided to start thumping one with training weapons for no reason while he was away. Unbloody likely Tilda. Cersei granted him a grim grin. You must be seeing things, little brother. He scowled at his smug sister. You've got a bruise on your face. Elia sniffed. We haven't the foggiest idea what you mean. And you have a split lip. Lyanna opened her mouth to refute that. Not a word from you. He jabbed a finger her way and snarled her into silence. The three of you are going to sit and allow yourselves to be healed. Do you understand? Credit where it was due, Cersei and Elia knew better than to protest. Not so Lyanna, she had to be stubborn. I'm fine, my love. Really, it's just a scratch. Naruto drew on the natural energy in the air, yanked it inward and made his eyes gleam gold. Do you understand? Nymeria hid a giggle behind her hand. Perhaps you should let them keep their injuries. After all, they've clearly claimed that they have none. Nim, he chastised her under his breath, not the time. Oops. They noticed that. Or rather, Lyanna did. 0.0.0.0. Lyanna idly noticed the nickname. In the same moment, she noticed Nymeria lingering close by his side, closer than usual. She had returned, it seemed. That was good, she supposed. Nathaniel had been most morose without her. But she was standing awfully close to him. Almost leaning against him. Wait. Suddenly concerned, she peered closer at the pair, and while there were no overt signs of foul play present, she knew. She didn't know how, or why, or when, only that she did. Although Nymeria wore yet another of her many faces, the faceless girl's eyes were half-lidded with smoldering smugness, her cheeks pleasantly flushed, her posture at ease and well relaxed. She favored her right leg over her left for once as well, which seemed rather unusual for one normally so fleet of foot. All signs pointed to the obvious. Call it a woman's intuition. And right now, Lyanna's intuition told her that they were, all of them, currently fighting for second place. She was merely the first to realize it. Already Cersei and Elia were staring her way, perhaps they knew, or merely suspected the truth. Regardless, it didn't change the facts. That sneaky bitch. Small wonder Nathaniel had convinced Nymeria to return. He'd lain with her, multiple times, by all likelihood. The realization stung, less than Lyanna thought it would. Oh, it still wounded her, make no mistake, and she was going to get Nathaniel for that, but it more a warning to hurry the hells up lest she be left in the dust. She couldn't even blame Nathaniel for what he'd done. He was a young man, and all men had their urges. Nymeria was, by rights, the safest option by which to sat his carnal desires, with little risk involved. She herself had the prospect of children to fear for, and while there was always the option of moon tea, accidents were known to happen. She'd no desire to bear a child out of wedlock, such would dishonor her house and result in her bearing a bastard. Nymeria had no such obligations, and by all rights, she'd known him much longer. Truly, it was miracle she hadn't jumped Nathaniel's bones before now, and due in no small part to neither of them realizing their feelings for one another. But now they had, hadn't they? It seemed so obvious now in hindsight. She saw it in the way Nim hovered over Nathaniel as he tended first to Elia's bloodied lip, the act of which drew a startled gasp from the Martell princess. The way in which she would occasionally glance his way as he healed Cersei's bruise, her brow furrowing as the older Lannister gasped and squirmed under her brother's ministrations. All the while she stood closer than ever before, ready to spring into action at the slightest provocation, not solely out of duty, not anymore, but rather, love. Seeing it hurt. It hurt an awful lot. This hurt, it hurt so damned much. Of all of them, it seemed only Nymeria was truly free to do as she pleased, when she pleased, how she pleased. It made her so wretchedly jealous. When it came time for Nathaniel to heal her, Lyanna barely noticed. He asked permission. She muttered her assent, and held out her arm, ready to have this over with, find her cot, and sulk. She could and likely would, be angry later. Right now she just wanted to be alone with her own thoughts and cry. She was of the North. She was proud, she was strong, she would not let something like this break her, no matter how much it might hurt Yao. At his touch, a warm tingle shot down her wounded limb and pooled in her chest, drawing a startled gasp from her. What was this sensation? It didn't stop at her bosom. His healing hands sought out other unseen bruises, mending her every ache and pain garnered in today's spar, one by one. She allowed it, still cross with him, but began to relax as he spoke to her ever so softly, asking her how she was, how she'd been, how she felt, until slowly but surely, like an unwound knot, her anger came undone. Unlike his time with Cersei and Elia, he didn't stop at mending her arm. He touched her delicately yet expertly, fingers stroking her sore shoulders through her dress in slow rhythmic circles until he gradually reached her back, followed by her ribs, then her hips. His strong yet so supple fingers dug into her muscles to render both her thoughts and her body a gooey mess. Oh, that felt rather nice. Very nice, really. In the wake of his touch came a strange, giddy euphoria, leaving her swaying where she sat. Nathaniel didn't give her time to savor it, he'd already gone on the attack. Without pausing, he dared to lift both her legs and rub her sore feet, and when working the kinks out of her toes didn't satisfy her fully, he went to work on her calves with dexterous aplomb. Next came her thighs where she'd pulled a great many muscles. Muscles, those things. She'd pulled a great many muscles, hadn't she? She could see why Elia and Cersei made those noises now. This was heaven. It felt rather nice. Downright tingly, really, among things. Her breath hitched at the thought as he touched her again, and she became as putty in his hands. With only a little prodding on his part, he had her sprawled out on her stomach upon the bed, arms tucked under her chin. Undaunted by what appeared to be a most compromising position, he deftly sat atop her legs and began to dug his thumbs into her lower back, followed by her hindquarters, leaving her pleasantly numb. And then, not so numb at all. She shivered and bit at a fist to stifle a groan of relief, then pleasure as her senses spiked, to no avail. Her back arched a little despite her best efforts to maintain control, all for naught. Oh gods, it felt like she was about to. Distantly, she aware of Circe and Elia staring, eyes wide and faces red as she cried out in blessed release, but in her blissful haze, she couldn't bring herself to care for their jealousy. He'd probably have them gasping his name soon enough, but she got to experience this first. What had he called this technique again? A back rub? No, that wasn't the right word. A massage? Yes, that was it. By the gods, it felt good. This was better than sex. I'm sorry for upsetting you. Nathaniel leaned down to whisper in her ear, lips brushing her outer lobe as he continued his masterful ministrations. I'll explain later. Hopefully this makes up for it. Yes, explaining sounded nice. Loud explaining, noisy explaining, preferably tonight. That settled things now, didn't it? His massage had done much to curtail her worries, but not all of them. Still swimming in a pleasurable haze, she made up her mind and cast a glance Nymeria's way. The faceless girl-woman wore the sweetest smile. They were already at war, but now it was personal. 0.0.0.0. A girl was smug, sore, and spent. Nymeria luxuriated in the feeling as she lounged in her cot. For once, she didn't have to guard Nathaniel. He was perfectly safe meeting with his father, which in turn gave her rare leave to lay back in bed and just breathe. Inhale, exhale, revel in her most heady triumph. It felt rather nice, actually. Winning. She luxuriated in the feeling almost as much as the silk sheets rubbing against her bare skin. What she liked so sleep in such a manner. Such was her way, had been for quite some time, now. Bereft of both clothes and her many faces, she stared up at the slate-gray ceiling of her quarters, clasped both hands behind her head and took a moment to contemplate her victory. She wasn't all that surprised by the Stark's reaction. She had not intended to take Nathaniel's first time. Or his second, and third. She simply hadn't been able to help herself. Having discovered the rare pleasures of the flesh, she found herself craving them all the more. She might have taken care in the future, lest she lose herself to it. Regardless of her feelings on the subject, Lady Stark wouldn't be in any position to demand answers from her anytime soon. Nor would Lady Lannister and Lady Martell for that matter. They had, each of them, demanded a massage after Lyanna had her turn, naturally. They wouldn't be walking about any time soon. Perhaps she should ask for one of those as well, but no, she much rather preferred the sex. Her face warmed as she rose. Here at last she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Confusion dawned. Her violet-gray eyes widened, bulged now in disbelief. She'd not had a chance to look at herself since returning to the rock. In truth, she simply hadn't felt the need. Nathaniel's healing ministrations hadn't gone unnoticed last night, but she'd paid them little heed, thinking he was merely healing the worst of the scars on her breasts and shoulders. She was both right, and so very wrong. Because you see, it was gone. Vanished. Her facial scar was nowhere to be seen. She sat up, scrubbed at her eyes with both hands, but the scene before her did not change. That ghastly mark that had once carved the length of her true face was now nowhere to be seen, as though it never existed at all. She made a small hysterical noise, momentarily unable to believe it. So that was what he'd done last night. Nymeria began to laugh. Still laughing, she moved to don one of her few dresses, a long, lovely thing in golden Lannister red, arrayed herself before the mirror, then spun about for good measure, pale hair lofting about her head like some holy halo. Her reflection preened back at her as she came to stop, proud as a peacock. She looked like a proper princess. Even if she would never truly be one, she could take solace in that, at least. The door opened behind her and she jolted as Joanna Lannister herself entered the room. A girl wasn't prepared to face Nathaniel's mother. Lady Lannister. Thankfully, the older woman looked like she'd seen a ghost herself. You look just like Rhaella now. Nymeria sputtered in quiet confusion. The queen, what did she have to do with this? A girl does not understand. A look of anguish flashed across the Lannister matriarch's face before she shook her head. Never mind. With one hand, Lord Tywin's wife closed the door behind her and locked it for good measure. Nymeria eyed her warily, wishing she had a knife. Did you need something? A wan smile was her only reward. I had hoped we might talk. About poor Nathaniel, no doubt, if that is your desire. Joanna glided into the room, hands clasped before her golden gown. A perfunctory inspect of her surrounds followed before she sat on Nymeria's bed, leaving her with no choice but to stand. The power play wasn't lost on her. Nobles were often like that. Master was the only one she'd ever understood, and he baffled her sometimes. His mother mystified her. My son cares for you a great deal. Speak carefully, now. He does, my lady. Joanna stared at her for a long moment. You've been with him. Nymeria contemplated lying, then thought better of it at the last. I have. When? Recently, she retorted instantly, lifting her chin. Last night, then. Joanna nodded softly to herself, as though confirming something she'd silently suspected all along. Good. Had you lied, I would have cut out your tongue. Nymeria did not quail. She'd long since grown inured to such violent threats. Instead, she raised her chin higher and stared her down. A girl is nothing if not honest. So you are. Lady Lannister shook her head. If only she could see you now. Would she be proud, I wonder? Or would she hate you? But the lady was still speaking and she must attend her. Be good to him, Nymeria. And if you betray him. Quick as a flash, Joanna burst to her feet and crossed the distance between them to seize her by the face. She pinched both cheeks viciously, fingernails biting into her recently healed visage. Nothing in the world will save you. She hissed at her. I would sooner die than harm him. Joanna released her. I believe you. One more question. How sharp are those knives of yours? Have you gotten rusty? Her smile proved just as sharp. A girl has not. Good. Then I have a task for you. 0.0.0.0. You seem satisfied. Naruto didn't look up from the battle map. I suppose I am. Finally brought that faceless girl of yours back into the fold, did you? A muscle jumped in his jaw, quietly quelled. On a certain level he knew Tywin was trying to goad him, the better to measure his reaction. He didn't begrudge him for it. Such was simply his way. Even so, he couldn't quite conceal a prickle of irritation at the dismissive tone he'd used just now. Like she didn't exist, didn't matter. Her name is Nymeria. For some reason, that made Tywin laugh, a rare genuine sound. Good, remember that and do not lose sight of her again. Confusion had him looking up from the plan he'd sketched out, hiding his confusion behind another glass of wine. Did the old man know? No, surely not. Keep her close. Tywin took a brief drink of his own, paused now, as their eyes meeting his over the rim of his goblet. That woman will give you strong children. Lannister children. Naruto nearly choked on his wine. Stop that. His sire chided him as he coughed for air. Even I was young once. Nymeria is loyal if not to House Lannister, then to you. Beyond that, I trust her to be discreet. Nothing else matters. Now about this latest scheme of yours, I must protest. He traced a finger along the fleet of ships he'd arrayed across the table. Even you cannot walk on water. Naruto's strained grimace became a beatific grin. Couldn't walk on water, How little he knew. 0.0.0.0. The Stark forces arrived just in time. Only 2 days before the Greyjoy fleet was set to arrive, a mighty column of men reached the gates of Castle Rock. Some of the Northmen grumbled at the idea of helping Westerners, that much was to be expected. Still, they were Northerners, they kept their word, and the Greyjoys were an old enemy. For a wolf, the Kraken seemed as good a foe as any. Lyanna saw the man standing at the head of the column, leading them. She leapt into his arms with a delighted cry. Father! Lord Rickard Stark caught her with a startled grunt, laughing but a little. Come, there is much we must discuss. 0.0.0.0. The Greyjoy fleet sailed into Lannisport under cover of darkness. They were well prepared for those foolish Krakens. All of them. From his hideaway in the docks, Naruto considered them intently, watching as they drew closer. Ready. Nymeria's chin came down over his shoulder, her leather armor creaking ever so softly against his own. Always. Since making peace with Nymeria, he noticed her more often, strange as that might sound. She wasn't always at his side directly, but when she was, she no longer shied away. She'd found her confidence. Good, she'd be needing every bit of it tonight. A unique variant of hidden mist jutsu on his part had likewise emboldened the Greyjoys. Doubtless they thought themselves safe under the fog. How little they knew. It was almost sad, truly. Did you bring your mask? A girl has it. She held up the item he'd made for her, carved from darkest night and fiery paint, shaped in the likeness of a snarling dragon. He had one himself, fashioned by his own hands of black and red ceramic carved into the horrific shape of a roaring lion. Proper spooky, he thought. For the invaders, it would be terrifying. Kurama and Shukaku had a good laugh over that one. Shame they wouldn't be joining them in this battle. But now was not the time for such things. Reaching behind his back, he drew his great black blow. It was an absolute monster of a weapon, nearly as large as he was tall when full drawn. From there he held out his hand and Nymeria placed 3 arrows into it, large bulky things with strange cylinders affixed to where the arrowhead should be. He knocked 3 of them to heavy string, grunting as he drew it back fully. Such an act was difficult, even for him, but he managed. Pushed chakra into them now, and let them fly. Each soared into the air silent as a whisper. Even as they flew, he flung out a hand and Nymeria gave him 3 more, each loosed after the last. As for what followed, well, that proved telling. The Greyjoys never stood a chance. It was not Wildfire Aerys jealously kept that under lock and key, but it didn't have to be. He'd created a marvelous substance of his own. He called it blast powder. In the centuries that followed, it would become known by a far different name. Gunpowder. It would change the world. But for now, Naruto merely let another explosive arrow fly. It was akin to firing a rocket, an apt comparison, not that he knew what such a thing was. The explosion was massive, not only that it ignited the mist in a fiery cloud of napalm, immolating a vessel outright. This mist was no mere mist after all, but filled with explosive chemicals. Flammable materials, all, lots of things that went boom, discovered after a great many days of experimentation. Unsatisfied with the yield, he loosed another arrow after the second, sending it streaking forward in a fiery missile of death. It struck a longship's hull and detonated explosively, blasting a massive hole in the craft. The vessel floundered and began to take on water, still struggling forward, until he loosed another arrow. Followed by another. Yet another. Another. By the time he was finished, 3 craft were disabled and a score more were well on their way to sinking. Time for the grand finale. He yanked on his mask, drew his weapons, and strode across the water, hollering at the top of his lungs, chakra warping his voice into something horrific. As he spoke, he reached out with said chakra to weave quite possibly the most powerful killing intent-based genjutsu he'd ever created. Rip and tear. There is something to be said for the brute force approach. The men on those ships did not see a young man in a mask, they beheld a towering terror, a creature straight from nightmare, a beast conjured forth of their worst fears. Blood for the blood god. He fell into the act completely, menacing them with rich peals of raucous laughter. Skulls for the skull throne. Fly, you fools, I shall reap your souls. When faced with what they thought to be a demon from the mist, the Greyjoys reacted much as he knew they would. Like the cowards they were, they bolted for land. The surviving longships rode like mad to make it to shore. Naruto gave chase, cackling all the while. For it was there that Starks and Lannisters awaited them with drawn blades. Henceforth, this battle would gain a horrifying moniker. The Night of Bones. Lyanna looked lovely. It was a relief to see, for until this very moment, Lord Rickard Stark had been concerned for his daughter, as any true father worth his salt would be. He had feared that she might suffer away from the north, that she would wither in the west, away from the cold and her people, but apparently his fears had been for naught. She stood strong and radiant and proud, veritably beaming beside Nathaniel in the war room as she helped him point out the enemy formation, that, and where they would intercept them. She did not cling to his arm as some mewling lovelorn maiden might, but remained at her intended side as an equal, meeting him eye for eye as they vigorously debated the nuances of some plan he didn't wholly understand. Hard to believe she'd all but leapt into his arms only a short while ago at the gate. Such was but a part of his reason for coming to Castle Rock, not only to personally check in on his daughter but to ascertain Lord Lannister's intentions as well. That said, he'd brought the better part of 5,000 men west within. More than enough to repel the impending attack on Lannisport, beat back the raiders to the sea, then lay waste to the Iron Islands. It would not be a swift battle. He expected it to take time. Perhaps a year. He'd also left a garrison behind at Winterfell, spread out should the worst come to pass. No matter his concerns, he could not entirely strip the North of all defenses lest Aerys take it into his head to do something foolish. Which he just might, one never knew with the mad dragon. Forewarned as forearmed and all that. It also gave him an opportunity to meet the Warden of the West face to face. He had heard tales of Tywin Lannister, exchanged letters with him and shared correspondence in the past, but this was his first time meeting the man in the flesh. How best to describe him? Stern, severe, stoic. All those words seemed insufficient when meeting a monster of his caliber. This man had carved his family's legacy in gold and blood, and would for all the years he had left. But just as Tywin Lannister remained Warden of the West, so too was Rickard Stark Warden of the North. They were equals, if not necessarily in stature, then in rank, at the very least. He was not cowed by him any more than he would be a dangerous beast, but he acknowledged his presence nevertheless. As did Tywin himself, it seemed. Lord Stark. The older man granted him a grim nod, a curt acknowledgement between allies. We were not expecting you. He caught the question between the words. Why are you here? So that was how it would be, then. Very well, he might disdain the realm's precious Game of Thrones as a whole, but he could play it well enough when pressed. Someone needed to lead the Northmen. He ran a hand across the map, tracing the image of Lannisport with one finger. And besides, I wished to ascertain the status of my daughter. If his words were just a touch frosty, none in the room dared comment. Your daughter is just fine. Lyanna huffed, preening just a little, though she appreciates your presence. Was that a smile on Nathaniel's face? Or perhaps a trick of the light? They, at least, seemed glad to have him here. What's to be our plan of attack, then? Tywin's son and heir perked up, warming to the change as a lion would the sun. The Greyjoy fleet has taken its time reaching Lannisport, raiding up and down the coast wherever they wish. Nathaniel swept a hand across the map, indicating a score of finely carved pieces that served as ships. They think us unprepared. We are not. The key is to draw them in here, and then, once they've committed themselves, we'll spring a trap of our own. There he went with his schemes again, that clever boy of Tywin's. And that must be Cersei Lannister standing silently at his other side, listening with rapt attention. A most comely young woman, one who knew how to use a blade judging by the sword belt she wore. Perhaps Ned might like her. Benjen was still much too young, and besides, Brandon was far too smitten with that Tully girl of his. Would that he could cool his head. He might have brought him here to learn the ways of war, rather than secret him away in Riverrun. Wouldn't do for his heir to rush off and get himself killed. Unbidden, he found his gaze drawn back to Cersei Lannister. She was staring at him. The girl looked fierce. Yes, Ned might make a good match for her. Then again, did he truly want to wed two of his children to the Lannisters? Lyanna and Nathaniel go on well enough, but who was to say Ned and Cersei would? Ah, but he digressed. They were looking to him for an answer, to which he grimaced. My men are not skilled in naval warfare. It'll be difficult enough getting them into ships to burn the Iron Islands. They'll be useless in a pitched battle on the water. They needn't be, Nathaniel chimed. We'll have them waiting to entrap them on the shore with our forces after I drive them there with blast powder. Blast powder. His brow furrowed, but he didn't give voice to the words. And what manner of trap is this? Perhaps sensing his concern, Lord Tywin sighed. It doesn't involve your daughter, if that is your fear. She is family. She'll not come to harm here. As though that explained everything in the blood world. An awful thought occurred to him just then. Have they already been wed? Cersei went red. Nathaniel choked on his wine. Lyanna absolutely sputtered. Father. No. With but a single word, Tywin Lannister brought silence and calm back to the room. Weddings are for times of peace. We are currently at war. He looked down to the map and offered a rare sigh of annoyance. I suspect we shall be at war for quite some time. Good. Tywin possessed more honor than he'd initially surmised. He hadn't thought the man might try something in his absence, but these were perilous times, and much blood would soon be shed. Not just with the Greyjoys, but the Targaryens as well, though that conflict would come afterwards. He wondered how large that little red dragon had grown since he'd seen him last. With the Starks and Lannisters working together, the Greyjoys wouldn't last the year. And then, with a little luck, the Targaryens would follow soon thereafter. He remembered asking Lyanna earlier, he has treated you well. Her face had gone rosy. Very well. He studied his daughter once more as the strategy session evolved into further plans and countermeasures against the Greyjoys. Lyanna offered a few ideas of her own, memes that had many nodding and Nathaniel all but beaming with pride. Rickard was no stranger to love, having loved her mother very dearly, and Lyanna looked to be very much in love. But for now there were plans to make. He could put the fear of the old gods into the boy later. If there was a later. No, none of that. He could not afford to die. The North needed him. Steeling himself, he fixed Nathaniel with a quizzical look. Now what's this about blast powder? 0.0.0.0. Stop pacing and go to sleep already. Easier said than done, he supposed. Saying the words aloud should have helped. If anything, they only made him all the more restless. Naruto exhaled heavily, hands clasped behind his back as he considered his bed. It called to him, yet he couldn't bring himself to rest. His mind was still whirling with fresh thoughts and schemes, of plans that might yet go wrong, comrades that might die, and so much more. He'd gathered all the resources he could, had allies aplenty, fortified defenses, but there was still a chance something might go wrong. And he was left to contemplate it alone. Cersei had gone down to pray in the stone garden, Nymeria had wandered off, wanting a world with Elia. She'd said something about poisons. He didn't dare ask what the little or not so little anymore. He supposed Blackfire was up to. Something told him ignorance is bliss on that front, just this once. As for Lyanna, well, he didn't rightly know where she was. Speaking with her father, probably. Sleep would have been nice, at least then he could talk with Rhaella. It had been some time since he'd spoken with the rejuvenated queen. She was probably growing restless. Not for lack of trying on his part, he simply hadn't had uninterrupted sleep nor the chance to reach her in his dreams as of late. All the more reason to corner her and talk, the sooner the better. Did she know about the Greyjoys? And if so, why hadn't she warned him? Aerys was seldom the subtle sort. There must be some trace, some sign he could trace back to the Mad King. And then what? Even through layers of rock and stone, Kurama's voice was still able to pierce his mind as no dagger could. She's not at fault for this. I know she isn't. He bit his thumb in mild consternation, but if we had some forewarning we could have been better prepared. Krakal's been burned, and it's a miracle the raiders haven't made it to Cornfield yet. They're focused on us, then. Most likely. Meaning they may know about me. It was a possibility he supposed. They could hardly keep him and Shukaku safe forever. Sooner or later someone was going to notice the dragons. And that was assuming he didn't take the other 7 under his proverbial wing. Could he sense them? Was it possible? He'd never though to try, but then again, there had never been the need. Maybe he ought to try, but that presented a different sort of risk, because once he knew where they were, he'd feel compelled to seek them out, shelter them, save them. Someone knocked on the door, diverting his thoughts. He was grateful for the distraction, if only because he hadn't bothered to lock it. Clasping both hands behind his back, he straightened himself up, rose to his full towering height and lifted his chin to speak. Come. The door swung open. His eyes widened. Lyanna. Now wasn't this a familiar sight? The last time she'd visited him in the dead of night like this was way back in Winterfell. That hadn't been on the eve of battle, mind you, but he found himself drawing comparisons all the same. This time she more little more than a thin white shift. The garment clung to her, hinting, tempting, drawing the eye. But why would she wear something like this, unless... Oh. Tilda. She eased the door shut behind her and locked it for good measure. Leah. Before he could finish, she stepped into him, her mouth met his halfway, lips caging his. She kissed him slowly, sweetly, lips lingering over his own. I had to see you, she murmured, pressing herself against him. I will not be left behind. He almost smiled against her lips. No one is leaving you behind. No, she bridled, terribly cross. Then why does it feel as though every lady in this castle has gotten a leg up on me as of late? Naruto saw the bait but didn't rise to it. Elia brought you a dragon. Nymeria is your blade. Meanwhile, Cersei is. She looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I don't want to talk about her. And that's to say nothing of your dragon queen. She'd figured that out, had she? He wasn't surprised. Lyanna had ever been the clever sort. We've only exchanged letters, and dreams, he added silently, but that was one secret he wasn't willing to share just yet. She provides me with insight. But what do I provide you? Lyanna slapped a hand against her bosom with a cry. What do I have? Her plea floored him for a moment, then he rallied. You were my first love. And it was true. Nymeria might have been his first ally, but he'd fallen for Lyanna before her. She'd won his heart with his wild ways, and while there would always be others, there could be no doubting his affections for this wild wolf girl who'd slashed and clawed and torn her way into his good graces. He cherished her, truly. She'd become his bride, then his confidant, then the woman he wanted to marry. He adored her. That would never change, no matter what anyone said. Not your first time, though. She was clearly still sulking about Nymeria, he could tell, but he had her attention. Do you really love me? He cupped her cheek and pressed his forehead to hers. What kind of question is that? Of course I love you. You know I do. She backed away from him suddenly and reached up to her shoulders. Naruto hissed out a breath. Hold on a second. Lyanna most assuredly did not. Prove it. 0.0.0.0. Prove it. Lyanna dropped her dress. It pulled at her feet as she exposed herself to him fully. She'd not worn undergarments baring her breasts to him and more, exposing herself fully to Nathaniel seemingly without a care in the world. A lie. In truth she cared very much what he thought. Daring to step forward, she took a hold of his hands, leaned up, and kissed his neck. Tell me you love me, she whispered, nuzzling him. Tell me you want me. Nathaniel didn't falter, but he did sigh. I do love you, and I want you, very much so, he amended when she made to protest, but now isn't a good time. Hells, this isn't a good idea in the first place. Lyanna nearly recoiled, stung. He was just looking after her, she knew. I don't care, I'll drink moon tea. Your bloody father's in the castle. She growled. I don't care. We might be heard. I do not care. Taking a hold of his face with both hands, she dragged his visage down to hers. He allowed it, despite being several times stronger than she, and kissed her deeply. She held him there for a long moment, refusing to release him until she made herself and her feelings abundantly clear to the brash blonde before her. Quite suddenly, he responded to her, not in actions but deeds. She gasped a little when he returned her affections, then again now when his fingers delved past her stomach. Paused. Now. Go on, she prodded him, face burning, forcing herself to vocalize what she felt deep within. I want you to touch me. And he did. Nathaniel wasn't a virgin, she'd known that, but it became abundantly clear. His fingers danced over her body, caressing the nipples of her breasts, teasing a pleased sigh from her, then a moan now as he traced trails of fire across her body. Her thoughts fizzled as he coaxed her body to new heights. Teased, tempted, tormented. Stop. Should stop. They must stop. Lyanna didn't want to stop. Why would she ever want to stop this? Being with him made her feel good and powerful and strong. How could something like this possibly be wrong? She pushed him back to the bed, climbed into his lap, planted herself atop him, then laid her palms across his chest. He could have flipped her over and perhaps she would let him later, but at present she was feeling selfish and wanted nothing more than his trousers off, followed by everything else soon thereafter. There was pain, at first, when they coupled. Lyanna grit her teeth against it, but in time it gave way to pleasure, and with that came sweet, carnal bliss. When her intended sat up, she demanded that he hold her against him, not with words but action. Slowly, gradually, she began to move in his lap, grinding herself atop him with slow, rhythmic movements, designed to delight and distract. Swallowing her pride and asking advice from Elia had proven a boon after all. For all her sass and snark, the Martell girl knew how to please a man. Surely owing her a favor wouldn't be so bad. Nathaniel kissed her neck, drawing her back to reality with a soft hum as she continued to grind her hips against his. She was neither mounting him, nor was he doing the same her, but rather they were caught somewhere between the two, delightfully devilish in their decadence. More. She wanted more. By the gods, she needed more. Some might call this foolish, that by betting one another before they were indulging in darkness she didn't care. Instead she began to bounce in his lap, short, savage motions, the better to hasten her own pleasure alongside his, until finally, she came. Her body quivered with sweet release, once, twice, thrice as she sprawled against her lover, exhaustion overtaking them both soon thereafter. Sleep claimed her most quickly as Nathaniel held her in his arms. She snuggled into him with a smile, warm, safe, and loved. Sweet dreams came soon thereafter, blessed and pure. She was still dreaming when the slaughter began. 0.0.0.0. From the mist they came. Masked warriors bearing blue eyes and blonde hair, armed with sword and axe and spear alike, they strode across the water and waded into the fray with singular purpose. Notably, there were only 9 of them. No more, no less. 9. In a pitched battle, alone, they wouldn't have made much a difference, but here with the Krakens hemmed in by Lannister and Stark alike, they made all the difference in the world. Time and again they targeted enemy after enemy, seeking out the commanders and any whom the invaders might seek to rally behind. It was a slaughter. Whenever an Ironborn struck one such masked warrior, it turned to smoke, only for another to take its place. They fell upon the Greyjoys in a frenzy of steel. None survived. 0.0.0.0. Euron Greyjoy took one look at the landlocked slaughter before him and knew the battle was lost. Bit of a pity, that he'd tried to warn his comrades. They hadn't listened. More fools they. Magic was at work here. He should know, given he was something of a practitioner in the arts himself. He'd studied the candles, saw the signs and the portents for years now, from the moment he'd first learned of that lively Lannister lad. With his birth, the infamous glass candles had begun to burn anew. They had only grown brighter in the years since. Doubtlessly they were blazing now. After all, magic was a dangerous art. It wasn't something just anyone could learn at the drop of a hat. It required sacrifices. Promise, power, blood. He could disembark from his ship, join the fray, perhaps make some manner of middling difference in the melee and die for his efforts. Or perhaps. The water rippled below the boats as something stirred in the deep. It was Euron's only warning. Against his better judgment, he looked down. Something stared back at him from the deep with so very many eyes. He lost his hold on the rope with a hiss. The dinghy splashed down, nearly throwing him overboard. Time to go. He'd expected some manner of magic, but nothing like this. His oars had only just touched the water when all hells broke loose. A teeming beast forged entirely of water burst from the depths with a sonorous roar, a wicked hydra bearing 6 horrid heads and great glowing golden eyes besides. It towered over the Greyjoy ships, dwarfing them with its sheer size. Was it real? An illusion? Did it matter? The survivors on land were lucky. They faced a death of sword and steel. The cowards who kept to their slowly sinking ships, those who chose safety over combat, they met a far more gruesome fate. Euron's stomach sank. This went well beyond mere magic. He'd created this monstrosity out of nothing but water and God share it comes. The Lannister lord waved a hand and those long necks craned back at his command. Drown in your sorrow and fears. The water hydra descended, jaws ripping and tearing. Choke on your blood and your tears. Wood and flesh and steel crunched in their maws. Bleed, till you've run out of years. Men screamed in utter horror. Give up your honor and faith. Blood flowed freely through the water. Live up your life as a wraith. Ships shattered like twigs. Die in the blood where you bathe. Death came for one and all. Was the boy singing? No, preposterous. And yet the words rang together, rhymed with eerie purpose as he issues commands to his watery beast. Another part of the scare tactic no doubt, but it still terrified him. Worse, the water hydra ignored him. He was but one man among many ships, his dinghy small, beneath their interests. Aghast, he watched the beast feast. His men died in droves, some dared to fling themselves into the water and swim for shore. It didn't save them. Euron spared one last lingering look for his doomed men and rode for his life. As he did, he cast a glance to Castle Rock, looming large in the night. The risk was high, but the prize was probably going to get him killed, but the reward would be well worth it. The Greyjoys were finished. Maybe not this year or the next, possibly 3 if they were lucky, but it was only a matter of time now. Tywin Lannister would destroy them all, tear down their towers, salt the earth and leave their corpses for the crows. No matter how far east he went, the man would doggedly pursue. Lannisters paid their debts. Everyone knew the song. Inspired piece of work, that Rains of Castamere. His family would experience something similar no doubt despite the leave they'd been granted by the crown. If one could call it that. Do as the king bids or join the lion in death. Except the lion wasn't going to die now, was he? The beast had a hold of the kraken now, had dragged it out the sea and onto land. No, the writing was on the wall, now. He'd been blessed with a keen mind, it had served him well on raids and when claiming his fair share of salt wives alongside a strong sword arm, but tonight he knew strength wouldn't save him. Guile would. Wicked wit and cold cunning were one's only recourse when faced with such a beast. Victory had never been an option. They were sent here to die, and in doing so, provoke a war. How fortunate then, that he'd come prepared for just such an eventuality. Euron plotted his course and started rowing. It wasn't easy, the tides were against him and he knew he'd be seen on his approach. Guards shouted from above, he would be facing a wall of steel soon enough. A lesser man might have given up and rowed away, letting the current carry him away down the coast. Yet row he did. Right to the mouth of the stone garden, and the cavern that opened to the sea within. Guards awaited him there at the dock, 10 men strong, more than enough to subdue and kill him. And standing at their head, a lovely young woman with long golden hair awaited him, clad in a red dress, her eyes a deep piercing green. This, then, must be Cersei Lannister. She didn't look particularly pleased to see him. Then again that might have been the ring of Lannister guards with him, each armed to the teeth. Thought yourself bold, did you? She clasped both hands before herself and clicked her tongue at him in severe reproval. Did you think you weren't known to us, Euron Greyjoy? Ah, they'd been prepared for just such an eventuality, then. The plot ran deeper than he thought. He'd been wise to come here after all. Not at all, my lady. He drew his sword for all to see. And threw it down at their feet. He was but one man and no matter how skilled he might be, he couldn't possibly hope to best so many. I've come to bargain, he said, hoping the words might buy him the precious seconds he needed. Her brow furrowed. With what, exactly? The greatest gift of all. He swung back his cloak and revealed the prize in his satchel, snatched from a Bravo Sea vessel he'd raided not a year hence, deep and vibrantly blue. A dragon egg. Cersei went very still. Euron Greyjoy grinned, teeth flashing in the gloom. Do I have your attention now? She was watching him like a hawk. Good, he wouldn't been disappointed if she gave in easy. He saw no signs of dragons, but he could sense them, smell them in the chamber beyond. Somehow, someway, the Lannisters had discovered a way to hatch them. Or maybe it was that miracle boy of theirs. In the end, it mattered not. Regardless, the tide was turning. He was simply the first Greyjoy to see it. Why should he be loyal to the Targaryens, anyway? The Mad King had father and his brothers dancing on strings. Euron danced to no one's tune but his own. The Lannister girl considered him for a long moment. And what's to stop us from killing you and taking that egg for ourselves? Ah, but he had also prepared for such an eventuality. I know the location of 2 more. Kill me, and you'll never find them. Cersei considered him for a long moment. And what would you ask in return? What to ask indeed. There were so very many things he could demand, each more appealing than the last. Had he more men, he could try and take these ladies captive, and their dragons with them, but no, such a course would only see his ship swamped and him dragged down to the depths. And even should he manage to escape, he'd be hunted down like a dog and put to death. There was no sense in being greedy, not when it would spell the end of him. He would wait, he should be patient, he could bide his time. Lannisters paid their debts, and Greyjoys did not so, but Euron wasn't above sowing a little chaos. Revenge. Yes, he would start with revenge against Aerys. And from there, well, who knew what might happen during the chaos of war? Euron bit back a smile as he bowed, deep and low. I wish to serve the winning side. Only until he could inevitably take everything for himself, of course. Lannister fools, by hook or crook, he would have it all. They knew not what awaited them. Then again, neither did he. 0.0.0.0. Naruto mowed down another screaming Ironborn with a roaring Rasengan, kicked a second aside, and obliterated a third with a vicious overhand swing of his sword. The blade did its duty and cut down the fleeing fool, but unused to such force, shattered in his grasp, leaving him clutching a broken hilt, again. Worthless. Men were dying all around him, and he couldn't even find a proper blade to endure his strength. Annoyed, he tossed it away into the mad melee and waved a hand above his head. In response, the water dragon Jutsu Hydra, he'd conjured lash out with all 6 of its heads mowing down a score more. There was no safety for the enemy here, neither shore nor sea could save them. The Starks and Lannisters were going to notice his beautiful display, but so be it. Better for him to flex his skills here, and save lives than to restrain the lion's share of his power. Taking the reprieve for what it was, he spared a glance for Castle Rock. He'd never felt so alive, so fulfilled, so burning with power, and yet. A faint, lingering sense of unease nagged at him. Elv got a bad feeling about this. The dawn heralded a magnificent massacre. Scores of Greyjoy dead lay strewn in the shallows and the land alike. Few, if any, had escaped to tell of the slaughter. The survivors, those who managed to surrender before Lord Rickard started lopping off heads left and right, were summarily rounded, questioned, then put to the sword. For Naruto's part, he was too tired to even savor the victory. It had been a long night and a longer morning thus far. He'd spent the better part of the last 10 hours wandering between the Lannister and Stark camps playing medic. That's right, a true blue healer, not one of those meddling maesters. Everywhere he went he expended his chakra, mended wounds, restored lost eyes, patched up limbs, even growing a few back where he could. The latter drained him more than he cared to admit. Restoring a lost leg or an annihilated arm was far more difficult than simply bringing back an eye, and to be frank, he had little practice at it. His efforts were praised nonetheless. Each soul he healed was guaranteed to survive. Many more would have tales for their families when they returned. They'd be memorable if nothing else. Much to his chagrin, he began to amass something of a following among the Northmen. That much was to be expected, he supposed. There was no point in keeping his talents hidden anymore, not that he could after last night's devastating display. The North were an honorable lot. They wouldn't go tattling on him, not after all the wounded he'd tended, not when they evidently thought him a herald of their old gods with his healing ways. But Aerys had spies everywhere outside of Castle Rock, and there were doubtless some lurking in Lannisport. Word would get out sooner or later, if not of his abilities, then of the battle here. Even with the roads closed, it was only a matter of time. How much time remained to be seen? Weeks at the least, months or perhaps a year if they were lucky. Luck. Bah, he didn't believe in luck, not anymore. He made his own. Still, in unleashing his talents last night, he'd broken the Greyjoys and minimized casualties on their sides. All in all they'd only lost 50 men altogether, and most of those had perished or died of their wounds before he could get to them. Alas, some superstitious sods refused to be healed and perished because of it, but that couldn't be helped. Regardless, that left the bulk of their forces was largely intact and, more importantly, so was their fleet. Once the stragglers were rooted out of Krakow and the rest of the West, they could turn their attention toward the Iron Islands. That would take time, months, maybe a year as well, though he hoped it wouldn't. He said as much when he made his report to Tywin in his tent. Good. Naruto's brow shot into his hair. Good. Wars are not won in a single night. Tywin didn't look up from scratching out his letters at the head of the table, no matter how much we might wish otherwise. Sealing the message, he passed it off to a nearby soldier and looked him square in the eye. Evidently he didn't like what he found there, because his brow furrowed. You need to sleep. The mere mention of it nearly had him swaying on his feet and brought the migraine he'd been ignoring roaring back to the fore. His chakra reserves were large in this body, but they paled in comparison to those he'd developed as a shinobi. And he'd spent a great deal of them not only weaving jutsu about like a madman, but healing people. Still his pride refused to allow him to simply collapse, not here, not now, not when there was still so much to do. Fine, he muttered under his breath. I've still got a few hours in me. You or no, and you do not. His father stood, rounded the table and steered him into a chair. We will need your full focus for the battles to come and we won't have it while you're working yourself to death. Besides, we have a prisoner. He claims to have valuable information for us. We'll need to question him before making our next move. An Ironborn. Kill him. He rolled his eyes. We have no need for. He gave your sister a dragon egg. His heart stilled. What? Tywin held up a furled piece of parchment. A raven arrived from her only an hour ago. Naruto fumbled for it, fingers trembling, shoulders shaking. He reeled, mind a whirl. The egg's a fake. Had to be, surely. He was itching to stretch his sense out toward Castle Rock, but he couldn't with this infernal headache of his. As much as he might argue otherwise, he was well and truly tired. Perhaps. His lord father did not shrug, such was unbecoming of him, but he did nod. He claims to know the location of 2 others. I'll leave that for you to ascertain. I can check right now. You may. When he sprang to his feet, Tywin pushed him back down into the chair. After you rest. Rest. There was no time for rest. He had so much to do and he was so behind. They needed to purge Krakow of the Greyjoys, make sure the raiders hadn't pierced into Cornfield yet, because House Swift wasn't at all prepared to deal with them, and then there was the matter of the egg and what it might mean. Tywin's stare didn't relent. Fine, he huffed. I'll sleep for an hour back at Castle Rock. Happy. A stern glare from his father gave him pause. 4 hours. 3. 5. 2. 6. 9. Naruto shot back. Final offer. Tywin's smirk told him he'd been had, but it was too late to take back his words. Lannister paid their debts, but they also kept their promises. All right, he groused under his breath, conceding his defeat with a surly sigh. I'll rest for 9 hours. But not a minute more. Then I'm coming straight back. Good. Shall I post a guard at your door? No. He turned to go. Nathaniel. Irked, he paused at the threshold of the tent to look back at his sire. Tywin tilted his head a fraction of an inch to the right, regarding him intently. Have you bedded Lyanna? Heat flooded his cheeks as he recalled the sordid events shortly before the Battle of Lannisport. Lyanna sat in his lap, arching her neck as he kissed her, gasping his name as she rode him. Lie now, life for your life. What makes you say that? Cersei claimed the Stark girl wasn't feeling well. And Tywin laughed, a sound rarer than a shooting stare. I've never known Lyanna Stark to be ill a day in her life. Fair. Be cautious, his father chided, this war is no place to raise a child. You think I don't know that? I'm well aware of what you do and don't know. His piece said, the Lannister lord began writing another letter. You're my son. Now, be careful, you may have a dragon on the way for all we know. It wouldn't do to have a wolf as well. Nymeria. He was talking about Nymeria. Naruto sputtered. A joke, from Tywin. Was the world ending? He fled, his father's last lingering chuckle chasing him from the tent. Nymeria met him outside, brow raised. He scowled at her. What? Her smile was far too smug for his liking. A girl is proud of you. Not another word. No such luck. She was incorrigible. Shall she ride ahead and fluff your pillow for you? Oi. She ducked the retaliatory swipe and darted ahead of him. He let her go, too tired to give chase. Whatever she was up to, he'd deal with it when he was fully rested. Not before. In short order he left and made his way back to the castle on his own. Returning proved easy enough. It was only a short ride up and the guards knew better than to question his presence. He fobbed them off with a brief tale of the Lannister and Starks triumphing over the Greyjoys before he stumbled his way up the steps and sought his chambers. Lyanna might still be resting for all he knew, the idea of sleeping beside her brought him some small solace. Her father was still down in Lannisport. No one would notice. And then he could figure out this egg nonsense. Surely someone hadn't given Cersei one, right? He rounded a corner and caught a flicker of motion in his peripherals. Someone clamped tan hands over his eyes before he could react, a sure sign of how tired he was. Guess who, Tilda? He blew out a sigh. I don't have time for games, Elia. Spoilsport. The Dornish princess huffed and released him, allowing him to see her face. For a moment it looked like she might tackle him to the floor, but one look at his weary eyes and bloodied armor put paid to any teasing she may have given or any such lust she might have felt. You look terrible. Was the battle that bad? Not as such. She clicked her tongue. When was the last time you slept? He most didn't answer that for his own safety. Her eyes narrowed regardless. Come along, then. She took him by the hand. Let's get you out of that armor, cleaned up, and into bed with your lady. We can speak when you're rested. She knew about Lyanna then. Blast it. He was too weary to argue, even less so when she ushered him into a side chamber. By the time she was finished with him and helped him dress, he was nearly asleep on his feet. I suppose I can't give you a bath like this, she tutted. A pity, I would have enjoyed it. Maybe later. HMHMMHMMM. She nuzzled her nose against his cheek in passing. I'll hold you that. Quietly, gracefully, she led him back to his chambers, and to the bed, where his head immediately hit the pillow. The last thing he saw was Lyanna's sleeping form hogging all the blankets. She'd actually slept right through the battle. Such a lazy girl. Just before he passed out, he cast a quick jutsu and cast his consciousness outward. 0.0.0.0. There you are. Rhaella finally found Nathaniel in her dreams. Her relief was great, her joy inexpressible, her delight complete. Today was a most pleasant dream. He'd arranged a neat little hillock overlooking King's Landing for the two of them, sat beneath the lone tree provided for shade. He looked up at her approach, one hand on his knee, eyes sharp as razors, something she gave no thought to. And why should she? She'd done nothing wrong. Yet when she made to approach him, he shied away from her touch. Or had she? My love. Did you know about the Greyjoys? The sudden question caught her flat-footed. That they were coming. Oh, dear. Nathaniel sounded angry. Rhaella raised her hands. There was nothing I could do. Aerys has been more paranoid than ever. I've been locked in my chambers for days. I had no way to reach you, and I couldn't find you in my dreams. You didn't write to me. She scowled at him. How could I? His cronies took away all ink and parchment from me. Does he know? No. She shook her head fervently, begging him to understand. He's done the same for all lords and ladies in the court. He's gone even more mad than before. He didn't answer that, causing her to grimace. It hurt her heart. He really did look quite cross with her. It felt like they'd taken several steps backwards. Damneedle, Eris, what had he done this time? Stealing herself, she scooted closer to him, hip brushing his. Please, let me explain. Nathaniel exhaled slowly, heavily, and took her hand in his as he sat beside her. Start talking. Rayella told him everything. Naruto awoke feeling more rested than he had in years. His last lingering memory consisted of falling asleep, dreaming with Rayella, listening to her story and the plea for forgiveness that followed. And he'd forgiven her, eventually. How could he not? Once he was calm and no longer flush with the raging heat of battle, he became logical about a great many things. She held no part in the Greyjoy invasion and had tried to warn him beforehand, likely would have if Eris hadn't taken her ink and parchment from her. His refusal to sleep for several days had only further complicated matters. In truth, it was a miracle the king hadn't already confined her to Maegor's holdfast and simply thrown away the key. He suspected Jaime had a part to play in that. He was likely keeping the rotten dragon distracted to the best of his ability, but as things stood, it was only a matter of time before events spiraled out of control. He had to get Rayella and Jaime out of that castle, out of that keep, out, and soon. And he could, if he was being entirely honest with himself, it would be easy. Therein lay the problem. Infiltrating the Red Keep would be child's play given his unique skill set, easier still if he brought Nymeria with him. Together, he was quite confident of their ability to slip into King's Landing undetected and reach Rayella, but the second they spirited Jaime and the Queen away, Eris would know the jig was up. And once he did. War. A war unlike any other, one the Lannisters and their allies weren't yet ready for. They would be seen as the villains. All of Westeros would turn against them. And he would have to kill them all. Innocent and guilty alike. Butcher men and women and children like so much cattle. Kill so many that none would dare rise against him ever again. He didn't want to be a butcher. No, if House Lannister wanted to be seen as the heroes, the champions, the righteous cause, they had to wait and let things play out a little longer. Wait, prepare, and pounce the moment the Targaryens overstepped. And make no mistake, they would, sooner or later. Until then, he would abstain, for now. Still, it was tempting to try, if only to see the gobsmacked look on the king's pustule-ridden face. Closing his eyes, he leaned back into the pillow and allowed himself imagine the moment. Hey, bastard, I took your woman, what you gonna do about it? Thinking of that was better than sex. Of course, there were other options at hand. He could sneak into King's Landing and kill Eris. The thought alone was even more tempting than rescuing Rayella. His brow furrowed at the notion as he conjured up the scenario. He began entertaining thought exercises, the better to keep his mind sharp. Let's say, for a moment, that he assassinated the Mad King. His rule wouldn't collapse. He had heirs. With the king's death, Rhaegar would take the reins of the kingdom. He knew very little about that man beyond the fact that he was well loved amongst the small folk of King's Landing, and he had an unnatural fixation with the North. Lord Rickard had made mention of the prince's visit to Winterfell and all it entailed. Just thinking about it soured his stomach. Rhaegar wanted Lyanna. For what, he didn't know, but he wasn't gonna get her, not after what he'd said. Pay call on her, he said. He'd be paying for new teeth if he showed up at Castle Rock and pulled a stunt like that. Lyanna was like to kick his head in long before anyone else did. Still, he hadn't told her yet. Better to spare his beloved that fear. Suppose he killed Rhaegar, then, offed him alongside with Eris. Who did that leave? Young Viserys, a boy who hadn't even seen 7 summers. A regent would be appointed in his stead, and it would likely be Rayella, if she remained. Not that she would. The second she got her shapely little ass out the Red Keep, he doubted she'd go back willingly. In any case, the boy was an unknown, one unlikely to forgive the death of his kin or the absence of his mother. He could try leaving a disguised shadow clone behind, the better to guide him the way he wanted, but that too, would be impossible for obvious reasons. He simply didn't know Viserys well enough to manipulate him. And he'd seen what a hateful child could do. Just ask Sasuke. In the end, there were simply too many variables to remove Eris at the moment. Better the mad, diseased dragon he knew and the realm hated, than the healthy upstart with an eye for northern beauties. Rayella may be held captive, but she was far safer now than she would have otherwise been. Drugging the Mad King's meals had kept his hands off her for years now, to the point of him almost entirely forgetting her existence altogether. Thanks to that, there would be no little dragon growing in her belly, which was also to the good. Thanks to her revitalized youth, something her lunatic husband was too far gone to notice and the rest of the court too scared to comment on. She was more than capable of fending him off should he dare press the issue. Not that he would or could any more for that matter, as Rayella had informed him of the king's most recent malady. Apparently, Eris had lost quite a few bits these days. An arm, a leg, an eye, and now his shriveled sausage. Oh, no, the travesty. Truly, it couldn't have happened to a better guy. Such a pity. He and Rayella might have been denied ravens for now, but they still had their little chats in their dreams, and learning about that little tidbit had him laughing for hours. Alas, one couldn't feel warm in a dream, not the way he did here in the waking world. Huh. He was curiously warm, come to think of it. Rather baffling, that last bit, why was he so warm? He'd initially surmised the blankets were to blame on that front, but no, he'd basically gone to bed in his breeches, so that didn't make a lick of sense. Baffled, he rolled over and made to fluff his pillow. Someone groaned. Naruto froze. Opened his eyes at last now, and forced himself to look up. He was still very much in his bed, yet as he raised his head, he realized his pillow wasn't a pillow at all, but a person. More aptly perhaps, their bosom. Lyanna's, rather. Lady Stark had latched onto him like a limpet in her sleep, looping both arms around his waist while he slept, the better to cuddle. Unfortunately or fortunately depending on one's point of view, that left her head resting against his shoulder and his face all but buried in her glorious valleys. Which were rather comfortable all things considered, but he couldn't remember how he'd gotten here. She'd been sound asleep when he'd fallen into bed. When had she latched onto him? It didn't end there, either. Someone sighed sleepily behind him and his eyes bulged in a singular moment of spectacular confusion as he realized someone was pressed up behind him, squashing their own breasts against his broad back. A tan arm draped itself almost lazily around his chest and after a moment he recognized its owner. Elia. The Martell princess mumbled something into his shoulders and snuggled closer, nuzzling her nose into his spine. He tried to dislodge and found it quite impossible. She had him impossibly pinned. Sandwiched between a sleeping Lyanna and Elia, he could do naught but sigh. They were the both of them, clad in naught but their nightgowns. Neither of them were wearing any clothes underneath. He could tell, given how tightly they were pressed in against him. Aten-shun. Naruto allowed himself a single incredulous moment of sheer disbelief, confusion, followed by resignation now as he lay back down. No way he was getting out of this unscathed. Forget about moving, he wasn't sure he could even roll over again without waking them. Unless... Nymeria, he hissed her name under his breath. You there. Someone moved in his peripheral vision. A girl is here. Belatedly, he realized she was sat at the foot of the bed, legs crossed beneath her as she observed the three of them. For a fleeting moment he feared she might be jealous, or worse, downright murderous. In the end, he needn't have been so concerned at all. Her smile was inordinately smug. Any chance you could get me out of here? She shook her head. A man has made his bed, and a man must sleep in it. Traitor. His sworn shadow didn't budge. Lady Elia is concerned for your well-being. She is good and loyal and kind. You should reward her, do for her as you did for me. What? He rolled his eyes with a snort, bonk her brains out. Yes. You can't be serious. Master, a girl is quite serious. Smirking, the Blackfire leaned over the bed, kissed his cheek, hopped off the mattress and sauntered out the room. As she did, he glimpsed the hound standing guard in the hall outside. Sandor turned his head, noticing Nymeria's approach, noticed him next, then saw the seemingly sordid scene within. His healed face twitched in a smirk. Lucky bugger. It wasn't what it looked like, really. Oi, Clegane, he hissed out an annoyed breath. A little help. Not a bloody chance, came the immediate reply. I like my bits where they are. Have fun, Tilda. Nymeria giggled once, waved a hand, and closed the door, sealing him inside. He heard a key turn in the lock and cursed softly. Damn. On the one hand, he was glad she was being more independent and thinking for herself. On the other, he really wasn't in the mood to deal with this right now. Lyanna he could deal with to an extent, so long as her father didn't find out they were sleeping together before marriage, but Elia was temptation incarnate. He was already towing a dangerous line with Nymeria, but there at least, he had Tywin's tacit approval. Betting a sly serpent atop a wild wolf was just asking for trouble. And that was to say nothing of Rhaella. The moment they met in the flesh, he knew things were going to happen. Loud things, noisy things, wild things. It felt like he was suffocating, steering a sinking ship, rowing the proverbial boat, bailing out water as he went, all the while trying to make it to a distant shore he could barely see. At this point he was half tempted to let the damn thing sink and swim for it. All right, enough. He needed to get up and was tired of tiptoeing around this. Reluctantly rolling over and, away from Lyanna, he faced Elia and poked her in the cheek. To her credit, the Martell woke quickly, her bright eyes fluttered open, blinked once, beheld him, then crinkled as she smiled. A hand came up to stroke his cheek, caressing him tenderly. "Good morning, my lion." The words made his heart lurch, if only because he wasn't hers. Honestly, he didn't know what she saw in him. "You need to stop doing this, Elia." "Do I?" She stretched both arms above her head, luxuriating in the ways his gaze raked over her. "You seem to like it very much." He grabbed one of said arms and held it between them as a crude barrier of sorts. "You're going to start something you aren't ready for." "And what of you?" She leaned in, pushing her hand against his collarbone. "You may lay with Lyanna, but you're dreaming of a certain dragon queen." Shock shook him. For a moment he balked, confusing briefly breaking through his carefully crafted facade. "How did you know?" She smiled. "You said her name in your sleep a great many times. I was awake to hear it." Lyanna was not. And that was all he'd share on the matter for now. They weren't ready to know the truth yet. That was a matter for another day. "It matters not to me." Elia shimmied closer, bringing with her the warm scent of Sunspear. "She may have your dreams, but we'll have your heart." His brow furrowed. "We." Lyanna's arms, still draped loosely around him, tightened abruptly. Her chin came down on his shoulder from behind, and belatedly, he realized her face was red like roses, 7 shades of scarlet, really. She mumbled a good morning into his neck and, almost unbidden, he felt a flush of warmth shoot through him. Not just from her body pressed against his, that was surely a part of it, but something else. Oh, she was awake. How long had she been? In the end, the answer was taken from him. Lyanna kissed his cheek. In the same moment, Elia crooned and kissed him full on the lips. His eyes widened and he leaned back, realization dawning. What in blazes did I miss while I was asleep? A great many things. The Princess of Sunpiesir pinched his cheek. "Lady Lyanna and I have come to an understanding. I don't mind being a mistress, so long as I can have you. Hells, I'll settle for being your paramour. Or your consort." She shrugged a shoulder almost as an afterthought. "Whichever term you prefer." He said as much. "Why me?" "Because I love you, silly oaf." She tossed her head, flinging dark hair over her shoulders once more. "There is no other man I want. It is either you or none at all. Without you I will die alone, unmourned, unloved by none other than my family. Is that what you want?" "No, but..." He tried to crane his neck back, but Lyanna wasn't having it. She refused to let him look at her and kissed him again, lips tracing his jawline, followed his neck. He nearly broke her hold then and there, because he wanted to see her face, get a better read as to how she felt about all this. "My name should be the only one you say in your sleep, Nathaniel." She sulked against him, pressing her face into his neck. "First Nymeria, now her. It's not fair. Am I not enough for you?" Her face was damp. He felt her tears. Kurama's presence abruptly intruded in his mind from the stone gardens below and jabbed him hard. "Fix this, now." Naruto blew out a breath. "Wait, that's not it. I'll let you have Elia." Lyanna whispered, "So please, don't run away with her." He put a stop to that right quick and whirled in her arms to take a hold of her visage, facing her fully. "I'm not running anywhere, I promise." Her lips quivered. "Swear it." "I swear." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Well, maybe to old Valyria at one point, but if I do, that'll be by myself. You'll know months in advance." Lyanna balked. "Why would you ever want to go there?" "Reasons." She slapped his chest. "Nathaniel." He embraced her. "I'll tell you them someday, but for now, you'll have to trust me." She leaned into him. "I do trust you, just." He tilted his head. "Just." She quivered in his arms. "Don't let Rhaegar take me." Double damn. Her father must have mentioned the prince, at some point. He'd hoped to spare her that pain. Seemed the dragon was out of that bag. I won't. He placed a hand under her chin, lifted her gaze, and kissed her softly before pulling away. If he lays a hand on you, the hand comes off. She laughed weakly at his words and kissed him again, lips lingering for a moment. I'll hold you to that. That was one promise he would keep. Ilya embraced him from behind before he could ponder the matter further, nuzzling his neck affectionately. Such bold words. You certainly don't lack for ambition, but I think that's enough talking, don't you? Let us focus on more pleasant things. He felt, rather than saw her look past him, her gaze searching. Unless Lady Stark has reconsidered. Lyanna spun Naruto around before he could think to react. Ilya's gown hit him in the face a moment later. When he raised his hands to bat it aside, the now naked woman took a hold of his wrists and guided his palms up to her breasts, allowing him to cup them, hold them, knead them to the fullest extent. His hands were quick to betray him. Damn grasping fingers. In a matter of moments, he had the Martell princess gasping happily. Yes, that's the way. As she toyed with her, he felt Lyanna's hands ghost across his hips, find his breeches and yank. He tried to look back, only to find her disrobed as well. Her lips caught his in a scalding kiss that obliterated any hope of resistance. He leaned into it without a second thought, but the moment he did, he felt Ilya's nimble fingers dancing across his scars, tempting him, teasing him. Not one to be outdone, Lyanna took a hold of his right hand, guiding it down past her hips with intent, urging him onward. Ilya's laughter rang in his ears, dark and heady, promising the greatest of pleasures. Enthusiastic, isn't she? She certainly doesn't lack for passion. So speaking, she slithered her way into his lap like her namesake and planted herself there, legs splayed on either side. Quietly, now, she crooned, licking her lips. We wouldn't want to wake the servants. Tilting her head back, grin on her face, she began to ride him into oblivion. To be fair, by that point, he happily let Lyanna and Ilya jump him. They didn't leave the room for 3 hours. 0.0.0.0. Now that he was rested, he had to confront Cersei. It was inevitable, he knew. No point putting it off. In all fairness, his sister didn't try to hide. He found her down in the stone garden wearing a red dress, clutching something to her chest. When she turned to face him, he knew Tywin's words and those of a certain foul Greyjoy he needed to visit rang true. Because she was holding it. A dragon egg. Another one. He couldn't quite contain his shout. Where did Euron even find the thing? Where was it even hiding? Cersei held tight to the blue-scaled object and clutched it to her bosom, wearing a sheepish expression. All's fair in love and war. Naruto palmed his face with an audible smack. Cersei, no. Cersei, yes. He held out a hand. Give it here, now. She backed up quickly. Why, so you can hatch it. An alarm bell rang in the back of his head. So I can keep it safe. You know those things are dangerous. His elder sister took another step backward. No. He stalked after her, wasn't asking. I said no, she shouted at him, startling him with her sudden vehemence. I have tried so hard, and gotten so far. I have done my best to be good, to do what is right, even when it hurts me. But it's always you, isn't it, Nathaniel? You're the one hurting me. He slowed his stride, pausing. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The venom in her voice appalled him. I know what the three of you did. He winced. I look at you now, and my heart hurts. She grasped one hand to her bosom. My breast aches. When I see you with other women, I want to strangle them, pluck out their eyes, and feed them to the crows. Something dark and ugly flashed across her face, hastily stomped down as she whirled away from him to conceal her visage. But I can't do that. Against his better judgment, he took the bait. And why's that? Because I promised. She rounded on him, tears in her eyes. Because I swore and swore and swore. And now that I finally have something of my own, you want to take that away from me too. Why? Why do you hate me? Have I not been a good sister? I tried so hard, and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter, and it hurts. She was openly weeping now, shaking where he stood. Why do you always hurt me, Nathaniel? He could feel Shukaku and Kurama's silent judgment as they watched from the shadows and hesitated. He didn't know how to react to this, let alone treat her at the moment. She was clutching the egg close to her breasts, yet his concern wasn't for that, but her own mental state. Cersei, he raised a hand slowly to placate her, and dared a step forward. Just calm down. No, she snapped back. I'm tired of being calm. I want you to look at me. I want. The egg abruptly burst in her grasp, hatching all at once, showering her in shards. She gasped, but it was already too late. Something emerged, a little blue wyrm, squeaking angrily at the both of them. Honestly, the two of you. So noisy. Naruto froze, eyes bulging wide. Was that? It was. It had two tails. Matabai. All the world held its breath. Cersei didn't dare move. Naruto balked. Achoo. Matabi sneezed suddenly. It was ultimately that which broke the tableau between them. Cradled between Cersei's hands as she was, the sudden action unbalanced the little thing, forcing his sister to lurch forward and catch her lest she tumble out her hands and harm herself. Alas, that had him lunging to meet her just in case she dropped the poor thing, which in turn, had his sister's face, turning a bright cherry red, which she diverted by focusing on the hatchling in her hands. There, darling girl. Cersei crooned softly, clutching the reborn Biju close to her chest. You're all right. Indeed I am. The hatchling clicked her jaws at her, producing an angry chirrup. No thanks to you, I would have preferred to sleep for another decade or two, but no, you just had to wake me up. Naruto snorted. Typical lazy cat, wanting to sleep in. Matabi heard it and rounded on him, mismatching eyes ablaze like balefire. And you, don't think I've forgotten your part in this. You just couldn't die peacefully, could you? She tried to flail her wings, but was still too weak to muster the muscle for it and managed an angry plume of smoke instead. You had to drag the 9 of us with you into this reincarnation of yours. I hope you're happy. Cersei sniffled. Now you've offended her. Naruto's brow shot into his hair. How do you know she's a girl? Matabi absolutely hissed. You would do well to retract that statement. See, Cersei preened and looked away from him. A lady always knows, Nathaniel. Great. Now she was sulking. Sage save him from his sister. He didn't think he'd ever understand her. Come to think of it, Lyanna and Elia had baffled him lately as well, and Nymeria before that. Rhaella, at least, made some small semblance of sense. He had plenty of time to sound her out, first through letter, then dreams and more. She wanted freedom, and had made her intentions toward abundantly clear over time. She didn't go and spring surprises on him like the other girls. Unwilling to dwell upon such matters, he looked back to Matabi, still ensconced in Cersei's arms and not keen on leaving anytime soon. In terms of appearance she was a different beast compared to Shukaku and Kurama. She had rich blue-on-black scales aplenty, but her face was strangely whiskered, practically feline with two mismatching glowing eyes of gold and green. Of course, there were also two scaled tails, because of course there were. The universe just loved to mock him these days, didn't it? Tyrion would be delighted to meet another dragon. Doubtless he'd drag the Hound's little sister down here to meet them. What was her name again? Selene, wasn't it? He'd have to talk to Tywin about securing a match between those two. Shukaku and Kurama clamored over when he wasn't looking. Well, the former crawled not yet trusting in his wings while the latter flew, landing neatly upon his sister's shoulder for a better vantage. Cersei grimaced as his claws dug into her not drawing blood yet still painful but didn't protest as he curled his 9 scaled tails around her arm for balance and leaned over to get a look at the newborn hatchling. Well, look who joined the party. Matabi craned her short neck up to glare daggers at him. Kurama, I suppose it was too much to hope you wouldn't be here. And is that Shukaku? She cast a baleful look to the cavern floor, where the paler dragon sat indulgently at Cersei's feet. You're even more pathetic as a dragon than you were as a tailed beast. The former Tanuki reared back on his squat hind legs and made a sharp, strangled noise. She sneered at him, smug as her namesake. What's wrong? Cat got your tongue. I will burn you, ya damn furball. Kurama chided him. Now, don't go picking on her just because she's just smaller than us. Naruto, of course, could hear every word. To Cersei, said words seemed the harmless chirping of baby dragons. Harmless perhaps, but their claws were long and their teeth terribly sharp. She had an alarming view of both as they snapped at one another. She'd absolutely frozen where she stood, caught between the three of them. Reckless, not suicidal, good to know. So, 3 dragons, now, great, who was next? The 3-tailed Isobu, the 4 tails. Son Goku was a hell of a name, and he didn't exactly want to call a 4-tailed monkey dragon that. But Cersei had turned a pleading look upon him, and he'd best rescue her. She wanted to keep Matabi, of course. Clicking his tongue, he held out his right arm. Kurama almost immediately accepted the invitation for what it was. In a single seamless bound he leapt off Cersei's shoulder, beat his wings once for balance and landed upon his outstretched leather-padded limb with remarkable alacrity. Steadying himself with his many tails, he tucked his wings in and settled in smoothly against his shoulders, curling around him like some scaled scarf. He'd nearly grown too big for that. Shukaku needed a nudge from his boot, but never one to be outdone. He scaled his leg quickly, climbed over Kurama, and claimed a perch atop his golden locks. Naruto flicked one eye up to glower at him. If you relieve yourself up there, I will end you. Relax, I ain't gonna do anything stupid, boss. Don't look at me, Matabi scoffed. I'm quite comfortable having this human all to myself. Cersei marveled at him, still clutching the little blue dragon in her arms. You're quite good with them, aren't you? He really was, and yet he still couldn't bear it, the awe in her eyes, the pride, that silent, unspoken longing. Well, not unspoken anymore he supposed. Not after that last outburst. Naruto looked away from her, unable to meet her gaze. She made a pained noise behind him. Nathaniel. I don't hate you. He heard her inhale sharply as he uttered the words, but barreled on before she could interject. I just don't know what to do with you. And he didn't. He wasn't afraid of Cersei, and he certainly wasn't yielding to her, despite the fact that she was older than him, physically speaking. She confused the living daylights out of him. Or maybe she was the confused one here. In the absence of Robert's visits to Castle Rock and with everyone so wretchedly busy dealing with the Greyjoys, there was no one she could truly connect to. Tyrion was much younger than her and didn't understand, while he knew mother and father would never approve. Cersei didn't love him like that, he reasoned. She couldn't. His sister was just a little out of sorts at the moment. Yes, that was all, he told himself. She was just getting stir-crazy. Robert would be good for her, surely. Better than he'd ever be. Right. Kurama bit his ear, startling him terribly. Hey, he glared at his partner, only to receive a glower in return. Why'd ya go and bite me for? A wing buffeted his face, smacking him for good measure. You know damn well why. Shukaku blew out an annoyed breath. He's terrible at this, isn't he? Matabi chortled in Cersei's arms. Truly, he is. Off. He waved his hands furiously, causing Kurama to snatch up Shukaku and Scarper and wheel back to the tree. After a moment, he heard the telltale clink of claws on stone, suggesting Matabi had wriggled her way out of Cersei's arms to join her siblings, which in turn caused him to growl again. Fine, leave me to deal with her. Traitors, the lot of you. Silence stretched across the stone garden. Even then, he didn't dare turn around. Cersei hiccuped. It was that sad little sound which undid him. He found himself pivoting almost without realizing it, only to find himself rooted by the tears in her eyes. She hadn't made even the slightest move toward him. On the contrary, she'd actually taken several steps backward, leaving her wringing her hands anxiously before him. Gods be good, she really was crying. Weeping, even. He could see the tears running down her face, clear as day. Why cry for him? He didn't deserve her tears. Did she truly care that much? Why? He grit his teeth, quietly incredulous. Why me? You know. She dared a step forward. Because I. Don't say it. He bit off the last word. Why not? She flung up her arms in a rare fit of pique. There's no one to hear us down here. None but the dragons, at any rate. Kurama chirped angrily from his perch in the tree, much to our eternal chagrin. Naruto would have laughed if he didn't feel so miserable at the moment. Instead, he palmed his face. He took no pleasure in this, didn't enjoy putting Cersei through this pain any more than he did himself. But he didn't see any other path forward. There was, as the saying went, no way out but through. Simply put, he genuinely didn't know how to respond without shattering her heart. This was his sister, a beautiful young woman, yes, that much he couldn't deny, but she was his own flesh and blood for crying out loud. Sister, sister, sister. By all rights and traditions it was wrong. The Targaryens wed brother and sister for hundreds of years. One could certainly make that argument, yet they weren't Targaryens now, were they? They might share some distant blood with them. Genealogies were strange and anything was possible. There was no telling how far bloodlines went back from Aegon's time, but the excuse felt hollow, even to his own ears. But they needed to have this conversation, one way or another. They must, else things would fester and rot between them even more than they already had. Cersei sniffled and firmed her lips. I'm not sorry for loving you. Clearly not, he sighed. She glared at him. Do you think this a game, Nathaniel? Is this all one big joke to you? Does my pain amuse you so? No, he chose his words warily, unwilling to provoke her further. Fine, say your piece, let's have this done. Her eyes didn't light up as he thought they might, if anything his words seemed to sadden her. I've tried to be so hard to be good for your sake, to hold it in. She clutched both arms close and embraced herself, forcing him to tear his gaze aside as the motion accentuated her bosom. I thought I could handle it, that I could be quiet, step aside, stomach silence for your sake. But I can't. Her green eyes rose, brimming with agony. I want to keep my vow. I have to keep my vow. But you're all moving on without me. And you. I spoke with you once already and you've said not a word about it since. What am I to do with that? He reached out for her. Circe. Let me speak. She snapped at him. You said I could. He crossed both arms before his chest and stood his ground, giving her permission. What am I to do? She raved at him, eyes wild and wide. Just hold my tongue and take it. Jaime's in the Kingsguard, Tyrion's smitten with that Clegane girl of his and you. She palmed her face and turned away. They're taking you away from me. If not the Stark girl, then that viper. You're not mine. You were never mine. And soon I won't even get to see your face. The air between them was charged. He could feel a spark lingering in the air, like electricity. HRRM. Westeros didn't have that. Another thing to improve. He was trying to distract himself again, wasn't he? He could tell her. He wasn't her brother, not really. By blood and flesh, perhaps, but not soul. Whoever, Nathaniel, was meant to be, he'd usurped him the moment he was reincarnated into this world. Not that she'd ever believe that. None of them would, not yet. Rhaella was the sole exception to the rule, with Nymeria understanding to a lesser extent, but Circe. To tell her that might shatter her. So many secrets, so many spinning plates. Keep rowing your boat, bailing out water as you went, before you sink. He had to keep up the act, because to falter was to fail, and to fail was to doom them all. Where did Circe fit in all of this? Where could she, where should she? You can talk, now, if you wish. She granted him a small, sad, soft smile. I'm sorry for snapping at you. I'm ruining everything, aren't I? This is ugly of me, downright hideous, really. You're not ugly. He bit back, surprising her as much as himself. You're beautiful, but you're also my sister. Her eyes lit up at that. So if I wasn't your sister, this wouldn't be a problem. A curious turn of phrase, but one that deserved an answer. No. She was up to something. But what, exactly? All right. She took a deep breath, exhaled, and seemed to draw some small semblance of strength from it. Right. Her head bobbed in a nod as she repeated herself. That's rather good to know. Really, it is. You don't know how much that means to me. If it makes you feel any better about this, I haven't seen you as my brother for quite some time now. Why did he have the distinct feeling he was missing something here? I don't want to push you, or come on too strong. She was still mumbling, stumbling over her words. I don't want to be too much for you, nor turn you away. What was he to say to that? What could he say? Lyanna and Elia might take issue with you butting in. I'll talk to them and secure their permission, I promise. She was babbling now, hand over her heart, eager to please. I swear on the old gods and the new, I won't steal you out from under them. There went another one of his concerns. She was doing a rather good job of dismantling those. But what about? If you're worried about mother and father, don't be. They won't learn of this. I'll be careful, I swear it. Blast, she'd said it before he could. Her eyes watered. Say something, Nathani, please, don't look at me like that. When he didn't immediately respond, Circe dared a step forward. Then another, yet a third. He stood his ground and didn't budge. Running would avail him nothing, he realized that now. Best to face this head on, one way or another. Even if he wasn't entirely certain what the outcome would be. He let Circe get as close as she dared, then closer still, until he was staring down at her, awaiting her next plea. His tongue betrayed him. The Baratheon boy is interested in you. Robert. Circe blinked once, briefly surprised before she shook her head. I don't want Robert, not the way I want you. She touched a hand to his cheek. I'll be whatever you want me to be. So long as I'm yours. Your mistress, your servant, your slave. He seized her wrist. Don't call yourself that. You're not a slave. Then what am I to you? She smacked his arm, drawing a grunt from him. When he didn't retaliate, she struck his chest with a balled fist. Once, twice, thrice, flailing ineffectually at him as though he were the very walls of the stone garden itself. I'm angry and tired and restless and sometimes I feel like I'm going mad. I wish that you'd chase me, or try to embrace me, for once, I wish you'd just say. He pushed a finger against her lips, cutting her off. I do love you, ya know. Cersei paused, desperate hope flickering in her teary eyes. You do. He drew her into his arms, tucked her head into his chest, and planted his chin atop her head, holding her close. But not in the way you want me to. She crumpled against him with a whimper, arms wrapping around his waist. Sometimes I hate that I fell in love with you. Her angry words were blunted by the armor of his heart. I know. Hate was an old friend, he'd grown all too accustomed to it. Could you try? She looked up at him, trying one last-ditch gambit. Just the once. His brow furrowed. We shouldn't. Just one kiss then. They were well past anger and into the bargaining stage, now. Please. That's all I ask. If you honestly feel nothing, then we can stop. It was a challenge. Backing down now would be tantamount to admitting weakness. She knew that, so did he, yet there was no arrogance in her eyes, no cruelty, no demand, none of the angry arrogance he'd once come to expect of her. Just a silent plea to be held, to be loved, to be adored, to be happy. What would happen if he denied her this? Would she become an enemy? Or something worse? Her hands fisted in his tunic as she fought down a sob. I'll marry Robert if you feel nothing, I promise. I'll never get in your way ever again. I'll do everything and anything you ask of me. Just, may I have this? His sister planted both hands on his chest, stood on the very tips of her toes, leaned up and gently pressed her lips to his. He held her for a moment, considering, waiting for something to spark. Anything. As far as kisses went, it was surprisingly soft and... Oh, dear. 0.0.0.0. Some time later, Naruto staggered down to the cells, lips still tingling. This was wrong. He knew it, should know better, frankly. And yet it had felt rather pleasant. No. Focus. Bad Naruto. Shaking his head fiercely, he cast those thoughts back into the darkness where they belonged. He could deal with family matters later and sort this out then. For now there was work to be done. Cersei had practically fled back up the steps in search of Lyanna and Elia. Not him. Down he went. Into the darkness. He lengthened his stride in an attempt to escape his thoughts, devouring the distance between him and his destination, taking the stairs two at a time in his haste to reach the dungeons. To be fair, Castle Rock had a very few of those and even less need of them these days. Most prisoners were either thrown into the sea to drown or simply beheaded outright. Lannister paid their debts, but they did not keep prisoners. Not unless they had need of them. Euron thought himself a clever monster. In making himself indispensable, he sought to bind himself to the Lannister cause, likely to betray them later. Naruto knew his type. The man was a user. Euron was already doomed, he just didn't realize it yet. Poor bastard. In short order, he found a sealed door guarded by no less than 5 men, each of whom saluted at the sight of him. Lord Lannister. The tallest of them thumped a fist against his breastplate. We've been expecting you. He cocked his head aside. The prisoners in there, then. A brisk nod. He is. Leave us and await me at entrance. No one comes in or out. Understood. They obeyed without question, stomping up the steps. It saddened him a little. Good soldiers followed orders, and that was fine for the most part, but he'd appreciate a few more like Clegane, men who could think for themselves. Another matter for later, he supposed. Taking a moment to compose himself, he exhaled once, steeled his face into a cold mask of Lannister arrogance and unlocked the door. He was prepared for an attack, but it never came. Laughter greeted him instead. Euron Greyjoy awaited him on the other side of the room, chained to the wall. Both his arms and legs were likewise bound, held taut with little in the way of slack. Good, they weren't taking any chances with him. The captive cocked his head to the right and granted him a grey grin. The prince comes to visit me. Naruto blinked. I'm not a prince. Not yet, the raider countered. But you will be. He had strange way of speaking. He wasn't sure he liked it. What do you want? Euron chuckled. It was a dry, raspy thing. Food and water would be nice, for starters. I'll see to it that you get some after our chat. Now talk. With a breathy sigh, the Kraken raised his gaze to regard him. I already told your sister what I want. To serve the winning side. And which side is that? He asked. Isn't it obvious? Euron gave his manacles a shake, insomuch as they allowed it. Yours. And after. I'm not concerned with after just yet. You're a sharp one, I'm sure you can figure it out. Cheeky bastard. He turned back toward the door. Let's see if some tools can't loosen your tongue. You can torture me if you like. Euron's voice carried over his shoulder. I won't talk, of that I can assure you. His voice rang sincere, surprising. Weren't all Greyjoy's filthy cravens? Nerves of steel, He pivoted to face him, hands clasped behind his back. You'll find steel can be broken. Perhaps, but I'm made of stronger stuff. The man stuck out his tongue, briefly revealing an odd black mark tattooed there. By all means, break out the hammer and tongs. See what happens. For a moment, Naruto found himself reminded of what Danzo had done to Sai, but no, the mark was different, carved in eldritch lines he couldn't comprehend. What is that? Euron closed his mouth, but only for a moment. You're not the only one who knows a little bit of magic. I won't talk. Everyone talks sooner or later. Not me. He remained calm, unflappable even in the face of pain. Anything I may or may not know, will die with me. Are you willing to take that risk? After all, you are so very fond of those eggs, Gak. His words were rendered a startled gurgling as Naruto seized him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. Careful now, his voice dropped to a low hum. I need the information you have, not the rest of you. I'm not above taking your limbs. We'll see how useful you are, then. Ha, his captive sneered. I'd offer you a sister, but I don't have one. Naruto decked him again, breaking his nose. Struck a nerve, did I? Another hammer blow bruised his face and sent a tooth whistling to the floor. Euron kept laughing. Violent aren't you, so willing to use force when that silver tongue of yours fails. He subsided with a sigh, grinning at him through bloody teeth. You would have made a fine Greyjoy. Shame you were born a lion, not a kraken. Some have all the luck. What did he know? Maybe he should kill him. Stop. Euron snapped at him before he could deliver the killing blow. If my life is extinguished, the eggs in my possession be destroyed. I've seen to it. His words rang true. He was telling the truth. Darn. Didn't stop him from decking him again. I have no desire to be your enemy. Even battered and bruised, the Kraken Lord retained his rough dignity. I only want what's mine. You'll take the crown soon enough, and I aim to be among your friends when you do. Bullshit. He decked him in the stomach, driving the air from his lungs. A wild cackle burst out of the raider. Oh, you might protest and make your excuses, but sooner or later, you'll realize I'm right. The Targaryen are a dying breed. They don't deserve magic, they don't deserve dragons, they don't deserve to live. Frankly, you're doing the world a favor. Who better than you to rule? He kicked out, dislocating the man's shoulder. Euron grunted in pain, but proceeded apace. Think about it, your father won't do it. He's too old, and he doesn't want the responsibility. Nor does your mother, your Kingsguard, brother. No, not for him the ways of kings. He'd be much happier with a sword in his hand, playing the knight all his life. Your sister, perhaps, but we both know she doesn't have what it takes to rule, to say nothing of your not-so-little brother. A punch snapped his head to hit the side. So much anger. He tilted his head back, baring his throat to him. So much rage. You want to kill me, don't you? I can see it in your eyes. You want to break me, make me talk. Yet you can't. You have nothing by which to compel me. But that's all right, I'm going to help you anyway, oomph. Another meaty punch sent his head reeling to the side. Euron spat blood upon the floor. Hit me all you like, it won't change anything. I've seen how this ends. With you, sitting on the Iron Throne. It's how you get there that's yet to be determined. Naruto recoiled. You're telling me you can see the future? Glimpses. Came the retort. If I could see everything, why would I be here submitting myself to your tender mercies? He looked down and laughed at his sorry state. Well, not so tender. Out with the old and in with the new, I say. One of the shackles shattered suddenly, breaking like so much brittle rust. Naruto pivoted in an instant, arm coming up to block. And yet, Euron didn't attack. He simply hung there, hanging loosely, grinning like a loon. Make no mistake, I'm here because I want to be. You help me, and I help you. He offered him his hand in friendship. Do we have a deal? Naruto eyed it like a kraken's tentacle. You do realize that if you step a single toe out of line, I'll have to kill you. I certainly hope so. The Reaver tittered. I'd butcher anyone who dared to cross me. Remind to tell you about my crew sometime. My ship earned the name Silence for a reason. He was making a deal with the devil, he just knew it. Still better the devil you know than the one you didn't. Wasn't that the saying? He could, without a doubt, kill Euron if it came to a fight. No mystical magic or twisted words would prevent that. Hells, Nymeria could probably take him. Barring that, he could just drown the man and go hunting for the eggs on his own. But if Euron really did have two of them. You're already thinking about ways to kill me, I see. That's the fun of it, isn't it? Euron smirked. Come on, Lannister. He wiggled his palm at him. Shake my hand. Let's enjoy this little dance while it lasts. Naruto exhaled heavily and reached out. They shook hands. Hail the father of dragons. Naruto buried his head in one hand and fought down a sigh as he grasped a goblet in the other with intent. Say that one more time and I will harm you, a baron. Nonsense. The young prince thumped him on the back. If anyone deserves praise after that display, it's you. He raised his own goblet high, to driving the Greyjoys back into the sea. He nursed a scowl in his wine. Not all of them. Ah, but you have that one watched by the hound, no. The Dornishman kicked one foot upon on the table with a laugh. I doubt he'll be making trouble for us anytime soon. He wouldn't, not after the deal they'd made. On the contrary, he'd proven himself most cooperative. Downright useful, really, occasional witty barb aside. Therein lie the problem. Reluctantly, Naruto raised his arm, reached out, and clanked his cup against a baron's own. He would find no salvation in wine tonight, much as he might wish to. They'd already thrown a massive feast to celebrate their victory at Lannisport, followed soon thereafter by a smaller, more private affair, with those who were in the know. That had been, hours ago? He wasn't sure. Wine had a way of muddling one's thoughts and he'd drunk more than his fair share tonight. Not enough to make himself drunk, he didn't think it was possible at this point, but just enough to lend his thoughts a pleasant afterglow, a distant haze that kept him from perseverating on more menial matters. Tywin father hadn't bothered to keep up with their drinking games for long and departed soon thereafter once it became clear they'd be at this all night. Tyrion had tried to stay up with them as best he could, bless his little heart, but at the end of the day he was just a boy. He'd folded hours ago and mother had carried him back to bed, leaving the two of them alone. A baron hadn't stopped teasing him since, naturally. What troubles you? Choosing a different avenue of attack, was he? Clever of him. HRRMPH. He growled and made to drink, only to realize his goblet was empty. He remedied that and fixed Elia's brother with a stern glare. What makes you say that? A baron tutted. You have the look of a doomed man about you, Lannister. I know it well. Come now, it's just the two of us here, the ladies have long since retired for the night. You can tell me. He very much doubted Cersei had gone to bed just yet. He'd last seen her whispering something Lyanna's ear, something that left the Stark girl's face terribly red. Elia was clearly a bad influence on her, to say nothing of Nymeria. He didn't want to imagine what the four of them might get up to while he was in his cups. So he chose not to. I'm overwhelmed, he admitted it to him freely, frankly, even. There, I said it. Happy now. The Martell laid his chin to rest upon one hand. How so? Plans for the coming battle? A blonde brow rose. You know it's not that. Ah, a baron's smile became a touch sharper, a tad more protective. I take it Elia made her move, then. My dear sister was never one to back down from a challenge. Now it was his turn to flush, for an altogether different reason. You could say that, but then again, Lyanna's very much the same. A baron caught the implicit meaning therein and boomed a laugh. Nathaniel, you sly dog, however did you pull that off? I didn't. He masked a rueful laugh in more wine. They made a deal while I was asleep. I see. Elia's brother did the courtesy of pouring him more wine, then some for himself before returning to his seat. Rather, I wish I did. Mysterious are the ways of women. Naruto glowered into his wine. I'll drink to that. As you should. A baron guffawed openly and downed another flagon for himself. You treat them well, I'll admit. My sister has nothing but praise for you as of late. He did his level best to be a good lover to them, really, he did. Ah, but that still left the matter Cersei. Cersei. There could be no more running from her, he supposed. He could hardly admit his issues and conflicting feelings, to a baron on that front for fear of facing his confusion, or worst, his scorn. There were some things even the Dornish didn't do. No, this was a matter he must address on his own, come what may. Time to face the music there, one way or another. If only he knew how. Wait, there was someone he could speak to about this. In hindsight, he should have known better, it wouldn't be that easy. Point 0.0.0. I fail to see the problem here, Nathaniel. Yup, really shoulda known better. Rayella. Naruto tilde, she sang back, using his tried and true name. We Targaryens have wed brother and sister together for years. It is our way, why ever did you think I would object? Tonight's dream had become a pleasant jaunt on the beaches of Dragonstone, their bare feet warmed by the waves. Together they walked hand in hand, simply basking in one another's presence. Or so he had been, until she'd turned his argument on its head. She'd a tendency to do that, didn't she? I'm not a Targaryen, he pointed out. Who can say? She shrugged the cylinder expanse of a shoulder. The Conqueror's bloodline goes back further than any of us could hope to trace, and he was known to travel to the west a great deal.